Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to MMA on the Island, episode number 12 here on the pod. And I have some absolutely heartbreaking news. I mean, in case you saw, I really didn't make a big deal about it. Didn't want to post too much about it, but I put it on the story. In case you guys saw, episode 12 was already filmed. It was supposed to be our UFC 292 reactions, along with a preview of the card that you guys just watched. With a bunch of other things, but unfortunately, audio was completely non-existent. I made a little technical error on my end, and no audio was being picked up for the duration of the podcast. So that whole hour and 20 minutes that ended up being wiped from existence, but it's all right. We're running episode 12 back, and it's going to be even better for this one. It's got a couple new segments for you guys, along with our recap, and that's where we're going to start of the most recent card in Singapore. I hope you guys woke up early. I mean, on the other version, episode 12, I was telling everybody, make sure to set your alarms for 8 a.m. I did so, and we were able to watch all of these fights, and they were bangers, starting from the very first one, which was the Parker Porter becoming one of the other than the Diaz brothers. We're talking about it on the Lost podcast, we'll call it episode 12. How he fought the brother of Junior Tafa earlier in his career, got knocked out. I think it was like last year. It was or 2 years ago. It was very recently.
That was UFC 284.
Yeah, it was recently.
Yeah, it was this year, not 2 years.
Yeah, it was this year. Yeah, it was this year. And then he fought Junior Tafa, and the Tafa brothers just have one on Porter, as the Junior Tafa got the first round knockout in impressive fashion, a minute 24 into it. It was kind of the consensus going into it that one guy was going out. But Junior Tafa, I'm pretty sure he was an underdog, or
no,
I
don't think
so.
No,
because he's young in his UFC career. This is only, I think, his third fight in the organization thus far. No, second actually, after he lost to the older brother of Kamaru.
That was his debut in the UFC.
Yeah, it was. So this was his second fight. And I'm gonna check if he was the underdog, but it was a quick finish, and from two guys who I feel like the UFC, they always, when it comes to the heavyweight division, it doesn't really matter who the names are, because these are two guys, kind of very, and Porter's end, he's not really, a high caliber heavyweight in the UFC. And then for Junior, he's obviously just getting into his UFC run now. And they always just, like to throw those heavyweights at the bottom of a card or in a fight night, just because, they know it's going to bring entertainment value, because it's easy. But Junior Tafa getting the performance of the night for that finish. Only took him 11 total strikes to get the job done for him. And UFC website doesn't tell me the odds of the fight. So thank you, UFC website, for being helpful and trying to back my case that Junior was the underdog. But it's fine. It doesn't matter. So we'll move on to a fight. And we were just talking about it off camera with me and Aiden. In Aaron Blanchfield versus Talia Santos, a fight that had tremendous implications in the women's flyweight division. Yet it was the second fight on the card, and a fight that, again, is early in the morning. Some people, if you're up at 8:30 a.m. Eastern time, even earlier on the West Coast, you're missing it. And, very questionable decision by the UFC to put it at the second fight. When you got the next fight was Nakamura versus Garcia, a fight that I missed, that, was two guys who were not ranked in their division respectively. And you got these two women at, kind of the top level of women's flyweight, and they're just, kind of thrown at the bottom of the card. I think it's a little disrespectful, but nonetheless, Aaron Blanchfield getting it done, a unanimous decision. It was a great fight by her. I don't think there was much to be debated about in terms of the decision. I think it was very close. I mean, obviously Blanchfield was shooting for the takedowns, had 14 attempts, was unable to get Talia down, which is impressive on Santos's end. 14 is tough to make somebody go 0 for 14 on the takedown department. But both women were able to keep the feet standing, collectively 0 for 17 on their takedown attempts. But a good fight, an exciting fight in women's flyweight, and Aaron Blanchfield was calling for the title shot. And I think, I think if Shevchenko wins, I think that maybe changes things a little bit. In this upcoming, in a few weeks from now, the fight night against her and Grasso in their title rematch. But if Grasso ends up defending her bout, obviously Shevchenko is not going to challenge for a third straight time. So I think Blanchfield's probably the next best logical step there.
Absolutely.
I'd say if Grasso wins, if Shevchenko wins, I and depending on how, obviously, there could be a rematch in order, but I'm gonna say if Grasso defends her belt, absolutely think Blanchfield is next. She called her shot, and I think that she deserves it.
Absolutely. No, I think. See, I don't know if I completely agree. I think if Blanchfield, I think Blanchfield's getting a title shot regardless. I feel if Shevchenko beats Grasso, I could see maybe her fighting. Actually, no, I'm sorry. I contradicted myself. I could maybe see Grasso and Blanchfield fight. It kind of like they might headline a card in the future, and the winner of that fight Shevchenko again. Because I don't think they would, like you said, regardless of the outcome, I don't think they're gonna have 3 fights in a row. Shevchenko and Grasso. That's just not logical. But I think there's no dispute. Blanchfield deserves a title shot. She beat Andrade, and I think she started Andrade's losing skid. Yeah, she did.
Yes.
So she's dropped to 3 now, but prior to that, Andrade wasn't on the losing skid. She was. So that win is more valuable than if she was to beat Andrade now. At that time she was like 24-8, and now she's 24-12 or something like that. So there's no denying Erin Blanchfield who she is as a fighter and the title shot that she actually deserves. I think she'll be a future champ, but we'll see. She has to get that shot first, so we'll see what happens, Joe.
I absolutely agree. I think she's somebody who is, really talented. She's young too. She's only in her mid
24, dude.
Yeah, mid-20s. Yeah, that's what I thought. 24. So, she's very young in the sport. She's a baby in the sport by some measures. So, really excited for her and to see her progression and to see her, one day the title, if me and Aiden's opinion, was going to be around her waist, whether it's sooner or later. We think it's only a matter of time. But obviously impressive from Blanchfield. But Santos put up a great fight. Obviously, it was a close decision. It wasn't a complete, one-sided affair by any means.
No.
So I like her against a fight in Caitlin Chuhugigan. Is that how you say it? Chuhugigan?
Her last name just changed recently. She got married, yeah.
Yeah, well, the UFC website, they don't care about the betting odds. They don't care about name changes because you're married. It doesn't matter. But Caitlin, formerly known as Shakugian. I like that fight for Talia Santos. Shakugian ranked 5, just lost to Manon Fior. Just
Sermonera, that's her last name.
Sermonera.
That's her spouse's last name.
There you go. So Caitlin Shakugian Sermonera.
Yeah, I like that. That's cool.
So there you go. That's a nice name, Caitlin. Very nice. But Herbert Santos 4-5, both coming off a loss. I think that makes sense at flyweight next because both women aren't too far off from the top.
And Chukugian or Sermonera, she hasn't fought in a while. I think her last fight was against Manon.
Yeah, Fior.
You said that? Okay.
Yeah.
My bad.
And it ended up being a loss on her end. Now you're good.
That was at Abu Dhabi. That was about a year ago.
Yeah. So she's been out for a minute, and so maybe that to open up the new year, that could be a good fight. Could be at the, and on the main card and at a good place on the main card.
Yeah, maybe third, not
on the bottom of the main card. Maybe third or second, even co-main, because that's 2 elite women in the women's flyweight division.
Absolutely.
To throw them at the 4th is just disrespectful. And personally, I'm gonna skip the Nakamura versus Garcia. I didn't see it. I don't know if Andy, did you watch that fight? We missed it. Sorry. If you want to do analysis, look elsewhere. But next, a fight that was honestly for me personally kind of my main event. In Giga Chikadze, the return versus Alex Caceres. And honestly, kind of a letdown for someone who was really excited for this fight of just how the fight went. It was very technical. Obviously you expected the kickboxing exchanges, but neither guy was really in too much danger at any point. Obviously, Caceres had his moments and Chikadze had his moments, but it wasn't a fight where both guys were kind of, putting each other, in harm's way for too much. And I think that is a testament to their styles. Alex Caceres, they were talking about on the broadcast, just moves so different compared to, a lot of guys. It's so unique the way that he kind of bounces and moves. And obviously he has that pretty sure karate background. So he's somebody that's just unconventional to begin with. And he gave Chikadze a little bit of fits in that first round.
Yeah.
I gave that first round to Caceres, and then Chikadze actually took over 2 and 3, in my opinion. But that was a really
it was undisputed 30-27. I didn't agree with that.
No, you didn't think Caceres won round one?
No, that's what I'm
You
saying.
don't
I
agree
said
with
I
the
didn't
decision?
agree with the 30-27.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely, yeah. I thought Caceres had round one kind of banked, but then 2 and 3, I think, were very clearly
Kate picked it up.
the other way. I think Chikadze maybe had a little bit of rust, or kind of figuring out that Caceres style, because like I said, it's very difficult. But happy to see Giga back in the
No,
win column.
absolutely. I don't know if based on that performance, not to say it was lackluster, but like you said, wasn't the most exciting fight, very technical. I don't know if that warranted a fake retirement by Giga. Not for nothing, like, he's a good fighter, but I don't think anybody would have shed a tear if he would have retired. Nah, that's fucked up. But like, I don't know. He called out Yair for the end of December. I honestly like that matchup a lot because I mean Giga was rumored to fight Brian Ortega. We have no idea what Brian Ortega is or what he's doing. But Giga getting a win back, a solid win against an opponent who, wasn't ranked 15, but nonetheless, Giga's 35 years old as well. So if he has any desire to become champion, which I think he does, he needs to start fighting guys ranked up higher. So maybe Yair might be too big of a jump considering Giga's at the 9, Yair's at the 2. Maybe we have someone before that, maybe like an Emmett and then a Yair.
Yeah.
I think that would actually make a lot of sense, but I don't think Emmett, I think he wants to fight at lightweight for his last fight because he said he's going to retire soon. And nobody believes Emmett's going to fight for the belt ever again or any type of belt ever again. So yeah, we'll see. We'll see with Giga. I think that fake retirement was a little corny, but his call out a year was pretty funny because I didn't understand what he was saying with his accent. He was calling him a pussy. He said, "Oh, pussy, Rodriguez."
Yeah.
But we'll see. That'd be a good fight.
When he started, because I'm not one that's crazy invested in the post fight interviews. So like, if it's kind of on, I'm just kind of like I'll watch it. But if something comes up on my phone, maybe I'll catch me on my phone instead of unless it's the main event, obviously, if you want to hear what the guys have to say. But in a fight like this, I was like, I don't really care what Giga has to say, personally. 100%. But when he started screaming into the mic and calling out Yair, I was like, okay, Giga, cut yourself a promo, Giga. I feel like so much of the UFC and how you make a name for yourself in the sport is making the most of your time in the spotlight, and I think he did. I think he did a good job. Obviously, that fake timer wasn't really that. It was like whatever.
It's like when Clay Guida did it.
Yeah.
I mean, Clay's a legend because he's been there for so long, but like, dude was never a title challenger, never a title contender. It was different. No, actually, it was not. I didn't really care, and obviously, Uncle Dana wasn't too fond of it either.
No.
When Clay did that, but dude, like, the Clay's like 41 years old. He's been there for so long. People want these guys to retire. Not want them, but like it would make sense,
Yeah. But I honestly I thought the way Clay did it was kind of funny though. I don't know.
I don't even think I watched it.
I was watching it live, and then I was like watching that post fight interview for whatever reason. I'm just watching Clay talk, and I'm like, this dude's so funny. I'm like, he's such a goon, bro. He's like, never mind. He's like, I'm not going anywhere. I was like, what a goon. But I knew Dana was gonna be pissed about it, and I guess rightfully so. Because again, everything's on it's an event's on the clock. There's time. Fight's supposed to start at this time. There's scheduling to it, so you can't really spend too much time.
Like I noticed that
post fight stuff, especially early.
No, I noticed that like one of the most recent pay-per-views is like if there's a knockout, like there's the commercial breaks are longer and all that stuff. But if it goes to decision, there's not many commercials. So like you said, they're on a clock.
Absolutely.
People out.
Absolutely. I'm not sure exactly how it works, but that's kind of I'm studying the broadcasting journalism industry, so I understand that when you have programs like that, like a UFC schedule, there's stuff that's timed out. They want guys making the walk, and it's not gonna be perfect in a sport like MMA where like the time is not exact of when a fight's gonna be finished or whatever. But there's some spots like you said and pay-per-views and even fight nights where there's gonna be more time and an extra commercial in there because it's a quick knockout, compared to when it's a fight that lasts the whole 15 or even 25 minutes for that case. Then they're going to go right back to the next fight. But for Giga Chikadze, I like him against Emmett. That was the matchup I had originally. Another name to throw out there, if you really want to give him that bump, would be a guy in Arnold Allen who we haven't seen in a while after he lost to Holloway. And obviously he's not somebody that he's taking some time off, it seems.
It's a few months
but I wouldn't mind to see him against Chikadze. It'd be a 4 versus an 8, and I don't think that's I don't think that's doing Arnold Allen injustice by any means, especially since he got that shot at Holloway, kind of that number one contender shot, kind of next step for the title Obviously, he didn't pass that test, but I think a test against Jacate, whether it's him or Emmett, I think would both be good matchups. And for Caceres, I like a guy who's kind of on the fringe of the top 15, and Leron Murphy, who obviously had some time off at one point, but is still undefeated in his UFC reign. So it's definitely deserving of a top 15 shot at one point. So why not give it to him against a guy like Caceres, who's, again, very difficult, a tough test for anybody. But moving on, Anthony Smith versus Ryan Spann, a fight that was just so interesting. I mean, it was really a tale. Each round was kind of its own beast, like a completely different fight when you go round the round. You look at round one, and it was really Anthony Smith.
It was. The leg kicks. He was beating his Spann's.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. The leg kicks definitely were doing some damage. But he was just, out striking him as well. Like, it was kind of like an all around. Really, I was like, wow, this version of Anthony Smith looks really good. It's probably the best that I've seen of him in that round one. But then round two happened, and he got caught, and that eye completely swelled up. That was disgusting. It was not fun to look at. And then round three came, and both guys were like, all right, we're gonna play conservative and play patty cake. I don't know how many strikes were.
Yeah, they both knew at that point.
Like,
no, you're right. Like at that point, going around through, they both knew they were up around a piece, and there was like no sense of urgency, especially for that first. I think that's why they probably gave Smith that round, because that first like 3.5 minute mark, I guess he showed he was a little bit more active, and then Spann picked it up towards the end. I personally had Spann winning that fight 29-28, and if you go based on damage, I mean, there was practically hardly any damage done to Spann. And you saw compromised Smith's eye was. I don't even know if it affected his vision or not, but I mean, it was kind of a toss up. So I'm not too angry with the decision, but I had Spann winning. What about you, Joe?
Yeah, I thought it was tough. It was one of those fights, and we were talking about it right after we were before we were training, we were talking about it, that Saturday morning. And it was a fight where I was like, when I heard it was a split decision, I was not surprised. And when I heard Anthony Smith, I was not surprised, because I was like, it was very tossed. It was very tossed up. I thought 1 and 2 was clear as day. If anyone thought otherwise, need to reevaluate yourself. Maybe check the prescription on those glasses, or those contacts, because they need to be upped. But round 3, I mean, it was close. But then you look at the statistics, and Anthony Smith outlanded him by 18 strikes. And all 18 of them being significant strikes as well. And obviously the judges don't have this, don't have the statistics in front of them. They don't have these numbers to look at. But, Smith did land. Oh, I don't know if that, did you think that picked up? Did you hear that? That one got picked up. Little toot there. That one like slipped out. I was like,
am I hearing that?
I was like, oh, that might be her. Oh, that don't smell great. It's getting sticky on the pot. Shit, my bad, Aiden. I'm
don't worry about it, man.
Stinking the joint out on this episode 12. But back, I don't know how I can get back to fighting, but back to what I was saying. Episode 12 is just forever cursed.
It is.
Doesn't matter what it is. We're gonna have to film this like 8 times. It's never gonna work out. But but it was, I think, visually, obviously, as Aiden mentioned, obviously one guy was a lot more beat up than the other. But I don't hate the decision. I think it was very much, I think both guys needed to do better. I think especially in Ryan Spann's case, where it was very clear that when Ryan Spann was throwing his right hand against the left eye of Anthony Smith, he wasn't picking it up well at all.
No.
So if he just kept throwing that jab out there and worked some combos that way, probably could have had him compromised again, taking a little more risk. But again, he kind of sat back and didn't do much in that third round. And so I can't hate the decision. Looking to the future for both guys. Anthony Smith, we were talking about a guy in Khalil Roundtree just a few weeks ago, and this is the matchup I wanted for Roundtree, the winner of this fight, and it so happens to be Anthony Smith. So let's give him Khalil Roundtree. Make it, co-main event of a fight night. Give Well,
the Roundtree was talking about getting those 5 rounds.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't know if that would be a 5-rounder.
No,
I think if
nobody was tuning.
I think if he puts on another good performance, against someone like Anthony Smith, I think he would be getting a 5-rounder, but I don't think Smith Roundtree is going to be too intriguing. Although, in this is another in middleweight news, Paul Craig and Brendan Allen were just announced as well. And I feel like those two guys, headlining a fight night, I think that's not too off from.
No, and it's hardly rare you ever see two guys who are ranked, in that 10 to 15 range. Like some guy who's not ranked in the single digits, you hardly ever see both guys headline a fight night. But I like that fight though because it's interesting matchups. They're both phenomenal jiu-jitsu practitioners, and obviously Allen on his 5 or 6 fight winning, I think 5 fight winning streak, he showed how multi-dimensional he is. He's well-rounded, good striker. And Craig's move to middleweight's exciting, especially after he submitted Andre Muniz. So that's a good fight that has a lot of, not to say like build up around it, but it's very interesting match.
There's a lot to be excited for. Yeah,
exactly.
Absolutely. Even though the name value and the ranking value may not be there compared to other fights.
I think Craig's made a decent name for himself just based on the guy he's beat. He's beaten 2. He's being a champion.
Absolutely.
Former title challenger.
Absolutely. I think both guys, for those who, who are fans of the sport and avid of the sport, they're obviously names that you're gonna know and you're gonna be excited to watch. But for the everyday person, they know Max Holloway, but they may not know Paul Craig.
Yeah, this is true.
So it goes that way. But I would mind giving that, I guess, Smith and Roundtree in that same vein, main event. But I don't think Smith's gonna want to fight that soon though. It's like 2 months. No, True.
3 months is a fair amount of time.
True, but I guess at this point his career's probably going to want more time.
He's 34. He's the same age as I honestly thought he was older.
Which is crazy. But he's 34 years of age. He's been on this earth for 34 years, but he's fought
55 times.
He's fought like somebody who's like in their 40s. So like he's got the wear and tear, and you can tell.
Right on.
So I think he may need a little more time now, but I like that matchup.
That's fair.
But for Span's case, I like him versus a guy Justin Jacoby, who just came off that big knockout, and I think deserves to be fighting up in the rankings. And I think that would be another exciting fight for both gentlemen that I probably wouldn't see the final bell. But lastly, the main event of the evening, and one that everyone was talking about, the odds were crazy. It was I think it closed minus 850. For Max Holloway when they stepped into the octagon compared to TKZ being like a plus 500 underdog. But in rounds 1 and 2, man, it was a close freaking fight. Like,
2 wasn't close at all.
I mean, I was competitive though. It was competitive.
I mean, Holloway had the knockdown and he had him in that dart stroke for like a minute.
Round 1 was
round 1 was I'm not trying to be dick, but I'm just saying 2. I didn't really think it was. No. I think one judge even had it at 10-8.
Yeah, but it was
1 was exciting though.
Yeah, one was really exciting, and when I saw that first round, I was like, man, this the Korean Zombie might still have it, But although obviously Max outstruck him by by a wide margin, 34-15, but I felt like the Korean Zombie looked good.
And it was a toss-up. I'd probably still give that round to Holloway.
No, I think it was a Holloway round. But I think Max, obviously round 2, that was when he got the knockdown happen. But I think before the knockdown, TKZ was looking good too.
He was looking very good.
But then, once he got caught, and obviously the big issue, and, obviously the podcast got lost, but what we talked about last week was kind of the chin of TKZ, at this point in his career. How's it holding up? And obviously, Ale was able to touch him up a bit, and he got the knockdown. And then in round 3, he went guns a-blazing and going out in true warrior fashion, just letting the hands go. And obviously Max is always game for that. But the better fighter found the chin first. So in 23 seconds in round 3, Max got the knockout. And
that was so exciting to watch, man.
What a fight, though.
Dude, as soon as TKZ went out like that in the third round, started like that in the third round, we knew that fight was ending in that round.
Yep. It was not going much further than those 30 seconds. And Max landed flush.
I know. Flush. But people say he doesn't even have knockout power, but you don't even need to have excruciating power. You just have to land it on the right spot, and that was right on the temple, man. So, and they put him to sleep. Amen. Yo, just to make sure, it is on, right?
It is on.
Okay.
I hear our beautiful voices.
All right, good.
We're not recording a podcast with no audio this time.
Dude, I know.
We're just paid. No, absolutely. But I mean, and to end what a career from TKZ. We'll get into it a little bit, after this. But what a moment I felt for him. Just to go out on his shield. Even though he did lose, and it was a tough knockout, but he chose it that way. He said he went out in that round 3, and he said kill or be killed, and obviously he ended up on the wrong end of it, but to see him retire and to see him walk out and the crowd sing to him, that was a moment that was one of the best in UFC history, I feel, and
That
won't
walkout,
really be
man.
topped.
That walkout was probably one of
Both
the most electrifying walkouts.
yeah,
Just the way the crowd. I mean, granted, it was
absolutely.
in Singapore, so he obviously had home territory. But take that away, man. It was just the way the crowd was involved, screaming this song, and even when he lost the fight and he was walking out of the cage for the last
Yeah.
time, can't take that away.
Yep.
And like you mentioned, I'm gonna piggyback for what you said. We
Yeah.
should appreciate TKZ's career really quickly, man. And obviously, I'm sure if you guys know and heard about it on ESPN, social media, and whatnot, he was out of the UFC, I think from 11 to 4, no, from 14 to 17, or yeah, I think 14 to 17, because he went into boot camp for the South Korean army or something like that in 2014. Yep. And at that time, man, I mean, he was in his mid to late 20s. He was gone for 3 years. That's like the prime of a fighter's career,
Yeah.
And he's one of those could have been fight. Not to say could have been, but we would have known where we don't know if where he would have ranked all time possibly as a fighter, man. Like you look at the guys he's beaten. He's beaten Frankie Edgar, who obviously Frankie Edgar is a legend of the sport. He's beaten Dustin Poirier.
Mm-hmm.
He's even though Yair knocked him out last second, like literally last second, 4:59 in round 5. Joe and I were just talking about this real quick. Take that second away. He won. He was beating Yair that fight. Those are 3 high-level guys in their respective primes that he's beaten. And the list goes on and on. He's fought legends in Holloway and Folk. Like he only had a 12 or 13 fight career with the UFC, which isn't exactly long. But you know who else has had 12 fights with the UFC? Justin Gaethje, who's 8-4. And legitimately, man, he'll probably go in as a Hall of Famer just because of the exciting fights he's been engaged in. 12 fights, I think 12 fight of the night or knockout performances or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
These guys, it doesn't necessarily matter how long they've been in the organization. It's what they've done in the fights they've had.
He's been for 12 years though. Not to go, but he's been obviously had that time off, but 12 years,
dude.
He was in
that was when the UFC was transitioning from the WEC to right, if I'm not mistaken, or maybe not, maybe it was a little before that. I'm sorry. The UFC was WEC,
or no, the UFC was acquired the.
Is that what it was? I'm not too certain on it.
Yeah.
Oh, so the WC merged into the UFC?
Yeah. So Strikeforce, WEC. Yeah.
Okay.
Because it was the Strikeforce or
sure
WEC organization end up then UFC ended up, I think, buying them out. So that's when all of the fighters came. That's when Dominic Cruz came in.
Okay.
And ended up, I think they made the bantamweight division because Cruz came in. If I'm not
Uriah Faber was a WEC
this might be egregiously casual, but from my understanding of it, I was freaking 8 years old at the time. Just for context, we're talking 7-8-year-old Joe's memory, but I'm almost positive that they bought the organization. They bought Strikeforce WC, and that's when they brought in Cruz and I see all these names, Benson Henderson and a few other guys like that. But yeah, so he's been in the UFC since then, and even, you think about before he left 2013, right? We'll paint this picture out for you since we're kind of doing our TKZ memorial right now. He was fighting on the headline of UFC 167 in August of 2013 against Jose Aldo. Obviously, Aldo knocked him out in round 4. But a good fight. And that's a guy who is fighting for a championship, headlining a pay-per-view. That's prime of your career right there. And he lost 4 of his years in his prime. Obviously to situations out of his control, because obviously, he can't help the fact that, that his country has that requirement for military service. So he had to go fulfill his duties to his country. So he did that. And, but just a crazy what if story, the Korean Zombie is of, what he could have been, probably would have been a champion at one point. Could have, in that time, because that was a time when the division, was kind of Aldo's division at that time. And I think that he probably in a rematch would have given him a better shot. Absolutely. Especially in that time to just grow and develop as a fighter instead of fighting, actual other countries.
and
people. But what a career and what a moment for TKZ to go out on his shield. And we'll get a little bit more into it later. So you have a question for him later in the pod, but we'll move on. An historic career for TKZ comes to a close in UFC Singapore, and that it's going to come to, and our recap of UFC Singapore will come to a close with that.
Solid card.
Yes, very solid fight night. Although I wish it was maybe 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock next time a.m. so I don't got to wake up at 8. But nonetheless, we'll move on. McGregor Chandler, talking about headlines now. It's been talked about since the tough went on, tough now over, and we still don't have a fight date for them. They're supposedly on the website. They said December 16th, UFC 296. That was supposedly on the website. That's why we're talking about it. Is that going to happen? Conor can't would have to go around the USADA pool for that to happen. UFC would have to pull some strings, which they would for Conor, of course. But nonetheless, we'll see whether it happens. Both guys acknowledged it, like hype about it. I'm not buying into it. 0 out of 10 hype and reliability score on that headline, because that I don't like. Okay.
So you're not buying into it because you don't want to watch the fight? You just think they're just talking?
No. In terms of whether I believe it's actually like news, you know what I mean? Of like whether I think it's actually going to happen, because it's like we've heard this story on and on, and I don't care if it was on the website. We're looking at the website now. They didn't update Caitlin Shakugin's last name, or have any odds of the fights that happened or are going to happen so far when I was looking. So obviously the website's not the best run anyway. So
I think it will. I think.
Yeah, you think it's gonna happen in December though?
I'm being a little.
Do you think it's gonna happen in December? I don't think so, man. I don't.
What else would be?
I mean,
there's so many fights that
it would have to be welterweight. I guess, like it would.
Conor started to slim down a little bit. I mean, his face looked like
he's gonna fight lightweight though.
Probably from that baby powder.
I don't know. Oh, he loves the baby powder.
Yeah, right. But I don't know. Because, dude, this fight, like you said, you're right. It's gotten pushed back so many times. Like, it was technically supposed to be last week, right? Because it isn't the Ultimate Fighter finale. It is. So usually, obviously,
yeah.
But this season was very unorthodox to begin with. Like they had veterans versus
prospects,
the young prospects. Like
the veterans kill the prospects.
I know it was crazy.
I think both of the tough fighters. I might have mentioned this last week, but both of the fighters ended up winning on 292. Were both guys who were already in the organization. Before, so the veterans ended up clean sweeping them.
Well, Katona's fight, Brad Katona, he's kind of annoying, but his fight was very good. I forgot who he fought, but the guy's actually like a high school history teacher. The guy who fought, it's a pretty cool story.
Yeah.
And Katona, when he won it, he was at 45, and obviously he's chiseled at 35. We'll see how he does in the UFC. I feel like when you win the Ultimate Fighter, though, you start fighting guys who are like not bottom of the barrel. Like I feel like decent competition, because it's not like the Contender Series,
Yeah,
I feel like it's a whole tournament.
The tough guys probably get a little more leeway, a little boost. But I don't think they rush him too hard.
I feel like Katona, they're not going to ease into him because he's been in the same thing.
True.
What was the other guy's name?
Oh, the other guy who won.
The guy who won it at 55.
Listen, I'm not. I didn't watch. I watched both fights. I did not watch the Ultimate Fighter. I watched the first couple episodes of the Ultimate Fighter, and then I couldn't do it anymore. Personally. The other guy who won was Kurt Holloway.
Kurt Holloway, I think. Yeah.
Hardball.
Nah, yeah, whatever. He his fight was exciting, but he's like 35, 36 years. Like, he's old. So
yeah.
I don't know.
Well, I don't think that's what the UFC was planning on when they had this idea, and obviously they didn't plan on McGregor picking both the prospects and all the prospects, not living up to their potential. But what are you gonna do? And obviously everything from the tough to now this fight has been a mess. But we'll have to see. It's just a matter of time. Obviously just a headline pointer got thrown out there. UFC 5, the new video game, got revealed. Didn't show any gameplay, just kind of a trailer, but I'm excited for it. I liked UFC 4. I thought it was pretty good. I thought there's obviously a lot of things they can improve upon, especially in the career facet. I think they should do a better job making the career more customizable, more unique. I feel like they should just kind of have random things happen to people in terms of because just like we were just talking about TKZ needing that military service. Everyone's fighting story is different and has to come from different ways. I think that they should do a better job with the story, or maybe be like, okay, let's say, people would get mad at this, but let's say, your guy tears his Achilles in training and has to sit out for, 12 to 15 months, and then he gets his belt stripped. That's something that happens in real life. It just happened to Jamal Hill. So make it more realistic. I feel personally that would be my suggestion. If anyone who's making UFC 5, and if they're still producing it, which they're probably not at this point, so they're releasing trailers, worked on it, could add. But nonetheless, I'm excited for it. New UFC game. I'll buy it, of course, because I'm a fiend. Next, Wonder Boy went on a podcast and was talking about 291. talked about throughout some of the opponents. It was Jack Della Maddalena. Obviously, you talked about Ian Gary, and there was one more that is slipped my mind. But he kind of talked about why he didn't take it, and it goes back to what he wants next in a fight that of somebody who called him out in Kamaru Usman. Is that during the time that the UFC was giving him offers, he started hearing that Kamaru Usman wanted to fight him, so he kind of was like, well, let me not ruin that opportunity and pull. And so so that was kind of that gave him the extra motivation to pull out. And obviously we still have no idea what's going on with the pay, but we've talked about that. We're not going to talk about that any longer. But an interesting situation for Wonder Boy, and I still think it was the right decision for him to pull out, especially if he could potentially get a matchup with
I went against Usman, as decorated as of a champion as he was, 5 defenses, almost a 6th. I feel like a win against Usman would probably warrant him a title shot, because at this point in his career, he has a handful of matches left at 40 years old, almost 41. So, I mean, it makes sense, dude. Why would he take a fight now with, Gary's an exciting fight, sure, but he's Wonder Boy's only fought once a year last year. I think he fought twice last year, but at this point of his career, he's not an extremely active fighter, obviously.
Yeah.
So what he loses against Ian Gary, he's going to be sitting at the 10th or 11th ranking, and then he can kiss his title shot goodbye. If he beats Usman, who's the one, I mean, Bilal will probably get screwed over again. But Usman, yeah. But Usman and Wonder Boy, man, they're legends of the game. They've been around so long. That's a fight a lot of fans would want to see. This is a fight I personally would want to see. But Wonder Boy was talking about not wanting to fight any more wrestlers. Usually you can't cherry pick your way into getting certain fights. But since Usman called him out, like you said, it was a perfect opportunity for him to voice his fight with Usman as well. So I'd like to watch that fight. And I know Usman said he wants to get in there one more time before the year ends. He's getting old too. I know his knees or don't have stable cartilage in them, so he's not running too high. He actually did you see a while back he ran for like the first time in a while with Justin Gaethje, and he got lost.
Yeah.
Snoozeman. But yeah, I would like that fight.
That's your boy.
I love the Snoozeman. He's so corny. I love the corny fight.
Can't stand that motherfucker.
But I would like that fight. I would definitely take Usman in that fight, though.
Oh yeah, I think Usman probably finishes Wonder Boy at this point, unless Wonder Boy can show some takedown defense that he hasn't shown in his career yet, and and really find a way to keep the distance. That would have to be a fight that took place if it was in the Apex, it would definitely be a problem. It would have to be a fight with a bigger cage, because the Apex octagon's a little bit smaller.
Yeah.
So it's a little favorite, and I think that's where he fought Muhammad, which made it even more difficult for him to keep his space and keep distance. But I think if he's able to fight in a normal octagon, an arena, I think that he could have a chance if he, again, can keep his distance and keep Kamaru away from his legs. But again, easier said than done, because Kamaru's gas tank. Obviously, we've seen him as champion go 5 rounds, multiple occasions, no problem.
It's insane.
Never a problem. And they stand up too in between rounds. I'm almost positive. I think he just puts
Usman. Yeah, I think he puts his hand on Trevor Whitman's shoulders.
I think he puts his hand on, which is even more insane to me. I'm like, I'll spar for 3 minutes and I want to sit down and take a nap. And this guy went for 20 minutes with like 30-second breaks in between, and has his hands over, breathing through his nose out his mouth. Like that's crazy cardio.
You know what's actually ironic though? Yeah. Little science fact for you folks watching at home. So you know how Colby called him like the CEO of EPO?
Yeah.
Well, EPO, which is like the drug, is like erythropoietin or whatever. Uh-huh. It actually is ironically supposed to like boost our synthesize red blood cells. So basically it helps with like your oxygen and breathing and all that. So if he's actually on EPO, it makes sense, because this guy has a gas tank for days. And usually I feel like guys who are so ripped like that, you don't have a lot of fat to burn, I feel like they gas out quick. Usually a lot of the muscle heads do. But Usman, man, he's
you know what Nate says. Nate says everybody's on him. And honestly,
yeah, I know.
I think there's definitely some truth to, not everybody's on him, but I think there's definitely some fighters that are definitely getting away with some stuff.
But Mike Tyson said something about that, and he's like, he doesn't really care if athletes take steroids and all that in most sports, but it should be completely banned from combat sports. And I couldn't agree with him more.
Oh yeah.
Because when when another man's life, not career, his life is on the line every time 2 fighters step into the cage, and you're already going into that fight with a physical advantage, I'm sorry, speed advantage, strength advantage, like all that jazz from taking a drug that your opponent's not taking. Not only is it not only is it advantageous towards one fighter, but somebody's susceptible to like getting really fucking hurt. So
very, very dangerous. Yeah, that's why.
and I agree. That's why they shouldn't take this USADA thing lightly. And I feel like as big of a star as McGregor is and will always be, if his steroid use is getting swept under the rug, it's kind of BS.
It's a bad precedent to set as an organization and as a sport that's supposed to be that like Dana's trying to build this to be, and he has built it to be. So I give him credit for it. To be one of the top premier sports organizations, just sports, not even obviously MMA, they've kind of got that unlocked, but sport organizations in the world. And obviously that there's been so much time that they've spent building their reputation to get to the point that they're at right now.
Yeah.
You gotta think that MMA was banned from most states, even, where we are right now in New York. MMA was banned. Professional mixed martial arts was banned until very, very recently. And that was when they were able to do fights at MSG and start bringing it back. But this is a combat sports has not always been legal. It's actually newly legal in many places. So for the UFC to kind of give Conor a pass and not and we're kind of getting back to the steroid talk. People that may be on it, I think, could be getting away with it. It's obviously it's a bad precedent to set for an organization that's supposed to be, kind of the premier, organizations of just sports in the world. But I think that ends a little steroid talk. I like that one. I think I might put that on the instance. I think that was good for both of us.
Talking about the juice.
Yeah, a little bit about the juice.
The Jamba juice.
Little juice rant for the boys. But let's go into this very quickly because we did talk about last week. Not last week, quote unquote, that you guys never saw because there was never any audio. We kind of match weight the bantamweight division, and me and Aiden, we there was obviously some we had some confusion and I wanted Sandhagen to fight you, forgetting that they just fought recently, so that fight really makes sense. But I think we kind of came to a consensus of what, and Aiden, you see it there. That's kind of the consensus of what we came to.
Absolutely. No, I'm looking at it now.
Yeah, where it starts with the title, right? You gotta start with O'Malley, the champion. And we've had this talk of, we've talked to Merab, we've had a Merab rants, and I'm not gonna I don't want to get into it again because Merab obviously said that Aljo deserves a shot. But Aljo went on his podcast recently and said that if and when he decides to fight, whether he wants to do 35-45, he doesn't know what he wants to do yet. But he says he would, if he wants to stay at 35, he would like the title rematch. I don't think the UFC's giving it to him because they don't like Aljo. So we're going to assume that the UFC doesn't. And Aljo said that Merab would be next. So if Aljo's saying that, then Merab by all means should be next and will be next, I feel, against O'Malley. I think it would only be right. So that's the fight that makes sense for the title. And then we feel the winner, right, would fight Sandhagen once he recovers from that tricep injury.
It makes perfect sense.
Perfect sense. The time works out. The timelines work out. Everything works out, right?
Yeah, it does. But the problem is, you look at star power. That there's like the difference between O'Malley and Merab is insane. Merab's, known because he's a really good fighter, but he has no nothing that's not like a dick. But there's nothing exciting about Merab other than how ugly he is. O'Malley, he has the eccentric hair, but he's big on social media. He talks to a whole bunch of different people. He's and he's obviously a phenomenal fighter. He's exciting to watch. Yeah. But
even Aljo has more fanfare than O'Malley. Obviously, most of it's negative because people hate Aljo for whatever reason. I think he's.
You mean more than Merab? Or
more than Merab. Yeah. And in that instance, where they were able to easily headline a pay-per-view, no question.
Yeah, I don't think that would headline a pay-per-view.
I don't think you could do Merab O'Malley headlining a pay-per-view. Which obviously UFC wouldn't love, especially since Merab opened up hypothetically as the favorite. In that potential matchup. Yeah, I think it was like -200 even. So, that's how much the sports books are giving Merab credit, and how much, the difference, that the sports books feel, because Aljo is also a big favorite just because of the wrestling. And I think that, probably the consensus is that if Aljo got caught, his teammate will learn from his mistakes and not, be that aggressive with the striking and leave his chin on a silver platter. to get punched, which still pisses me off, Aljo. Why did you overextend yourself like that? But we'll move on. So that's a very clear, with Merab versus O'Malley, winner fight Sandhagen, and we think that should be next. And then going down, if Aljo wants to stay at 35, give him a matchup against Jan. Make that the third one. I like that matchup personally. I think that it's not I don't think it's doing Aljo any favors, but I don't think realistically that the UFC is going to do Aljo any favors, because I think that they're not a fan. I don't think they're fans. I think they've been wanting to get him out for a while, and they were more than happy that it was O'Malley that was able to get it done. But that a third fight, obviously Jan coming off consecutive losses now, probably doesn't deserve it, but I like that matchup. And if Aljo doesn't stay, I think a fight against Song Yadong would work out as well for Jan.
I agree. I love that Yadong fight. I want Yadong to fight somebody else before Jan, just because I don't know. It makes sense though when you look at the rankings, because Jan's 5. I think Yadong is
he's 7.
7, and Font might be 8. They might have flip flopped between Font and Yadong. But yeah, honestly, that's such an interesting fight, and they're both really, really good boxers. I think that's like their primary style is boxing. So
yeah,
I would love to see that fight. I think Yadong. I would presume he'd want to fight again before the year ends, considering he had a fight scheduled already that didn't happen. I know Jan is pretty certain on not wanting to fight till next year, so we'll see if Jan. But who would Yadong even fight? Like, I don't know. Honestly, there's so many options.
That's the tough part, because they're looking up. I mean, he could really fight any of these guys, but I don't think 6 through champion, because 6 is Cheeto. And then obviously you got Jan, Sandhagen, Cejudo, Merab, Aljo, O'Malley in that order.
Cejudo and Yadong, maybe?
Nah. Yeah, but I don't think that'd be a fight Cejudo would take, but I think a fight Cejudo would take, because it's somebody who obviously Sean O'Malley was talking about, rematching Cheeto for the belt if Cheeto beat Munoz. That fight was very close. We're not going to break it down like we did last week again, but it was a very close fight. Obviously Cheeto had that slow round 1, but then came back in 2 and 3. But I like Cheeto to fight Cejudo. I think both guys were calling for the title shot. Obviously, Cejudo was getting in on the action, calling out O'Malley. And O'Malley, kind of acknowledged both guys. But I think we both agree O'Malley was kind of doing that to duck both guys. But I think if you put those two in an octagon, they fight. I think the winner undeniably could have enough of a strong argument to make the case for being next. And then, that could be the line. It could be the, Merab, Sandhagen, and then the winner of Cheeto Cejudo, I think could be the next 3 title challengers, potentially. Obviously, it's all hypothetical, but in this hypothetical world, I think that makes sense. I think that's just what the UFC should do. And I think me and Nathan we're mostly came to a consensus last week. So wanted to lay that out once again for you guys. I think, bantamweight right now is kind of in a flux. So I think that's kind of the best way that they can go about it. Absolutely. Because, nobody has a fight book. 1 through, I think it was 1 through 8, if I weren't mistaken. No, 1 through 10, 11, if you count Umar Nurmagomedov. Yeah, 1 through 10, 1 through 11 does not have a fight book.
And I think Aljo just tweeted on his I was about to say tweeted on his Twitter, but he tweeted on X that
on his X
tweeted
account, on his X
that he wants to rematch O'Malley next year. So I think he does want to stay at bantamweight. So like you said, I don't know, he has to fight another challenger before next year, because they're not going to give him a title shot with O'Malley. But if he said he wants to rematch O'Malley next year, I don't assume he would, because I think that would just mess up his chances if he, let's say, took a fight at featherweight, lost a featherweight fight, and then went back down to fight for the title at 35 again. I just don't think that would happen. Yeah. Even though it's a different division, I think they would be like, well, Aljo, this guy just lost 2 in a row, or whatever.
I even think that what he's saying that in the instance that he wants to fight him next for O'Malley, like Aljo being the next fight and it being an immediate rematch. And I just can't see a reality where O'Malley's out for that significant amount of time, because he's been active, for the most part in his career, which you got to give him credit for. And I think that the UFC is going to want to move on and not, can't shelve one of their biggest stars for, months on end just so Aljo can enjoy his time off, because Aljo did say he is taking a significant amount of time off, a significant in this sport being, a couple months, but nonetheless, he's taking, probably 5 or 6. Probably not going to see him back, I don't think,
for next year.
until at least, maybe early March next year. That's kind of
That's
the
the
time
earliest
frame
you see it.
That's the time frame I'm seeing, man. He's really kind of enjoying life right now, which I think I give him credit for. He just went back to back with 2 hard fight camps. The Cejudo and O'Malley, they were kind of back to back for him. There was, fight camp, and 2 world title fights.
Yeah, that fight was with O'Malley, I think, was booked a week or 2 after the Cejudo fight.
So he's been extremely active, and I think he's well deserved time off. But I think that you can't let the division stay stagnant at the top.
No.
And you can't do that to your boy Merab and keep.
But what happens if, let's say, Merab and O'Malley fight, right? Like in December, even though that's not O'Malley wants, you can't deny the challenge. You can't deny the title challenger. But we'll see. But let's just say hypothetically they fight, right? And Merab beats O'Malley, Merab becomes champion. Then what is Aljo gonna do? Is he gonna all of a sudden be like, you know what, I'll fight my boy because I want the 35 strap back?
No, or I can't see it, man.
The only reason he wants to go back to 35 is so he can get his lick back against O'Malley. But we'll see. If O'Malley loses the belt, there's no point in him going back to 35.
Yeah, and even if Aljo wins that fight, hypothetically, in this hypothetical world, let's say he fights, let's say in a different hypothetical world, he fights, O'Malley next, and then he wins. He's still gonna want to go up to 45 after, I think. So then he would just vacate the title, and then it'd be Merab versus O'Malley anyway, or Merab versus somebody else. Like it just makes it very messy. With Aljo, it just doesn't make sense, honestly. And we obviously talked about Aljo, big Aljo supporter. I think that he gets way too much hate, and I think that he's underrated by large measures. I think he's probably the bantamweight GOAT, as you guys have seen on the socials and on the pod. But it's his time's kind of passed as champion at this point at 35. I think it's time for him to move up, take some time off, bulk up, gain some 10 pounds lean muscle, and fight at 45. I think it makes sense for him. And he's somebody who walks around kind of heavy for 35 anyway.
Very heavy.
So I think it all works out for him to move up and kind of let that loss is gonna hurt. It's tough being a competitor and having to take your L and not get a chance in a rematch, especially when you're considered kind of, one of the best at your division ever. But that's where things are right now, and the bantamweight has to move on, Aljo. So I think you gotta move on with it.
Yeah.
So
I agree.
Yeah. So now moving on, far from unanimous, this debate time, and we're gonna go back to UFC Singapore for the first one. Where does the Korean Zombie rank all time at featherweight is our very first question of the day. We're talking all time rankings here because this is it. He has retired, and I don't think there's any debate in terms of where he in terms of kind of losing my train of thought here, but whether he's a Hall of Famer or not is what I was trying.
You think he is a Hall of Famer?
I think it's undeniable. Is that something that you don't think so?
I don't know, man. Like, yeah, he was so exciting, but his prime being stripped from him plays a big role into it. And he's fought for the belt twice. He's gotten knocked out, doctor stoppers, but he's gotten messed up in both of them. And so he was 7-5 in the UFC. Like, I don't know how you could become a Hall of Famer based on those statistics. And I know people might be like casual. The guy was super exciting, but even if he beat Aldo many years ago and was a champion even for 1 second, then I think that argument would be a lot stronger. But the guy, I'm not against him being in the Hall of Fame just because of how exciting he was, because it's kind of like a Justin Gaethje scenario, and I believe Gaethje kind of deserves the Hall of Fame.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. I think because of how exciting he was, he should be in the Hall of Fame. But based on like the wins and his actual, I guess, performance, the trajectory of his performance in the UFC as a whole, I don't think he, on paper, should get inducted into the Hall of Fame. But I don't know.
See, I agree with that instance where there is some, there is some iffy points about whether you think he's a Hall of Famer and where he ranks all time. But I think for the Korean Zombie, I think that I don't think he's top 5 all time, but I think he's close, man. I think he's close in terms of guys in the featherweight division, I do think that he's top 10. When you're looking at, all-time great featherweights, obviously you got Chad Mendes and Frankie Edgar in there. Both guys obviously getting the nod over him. Uriah Faber, I think it's close, honestly. I think Uriah Faber, I feel that in Uriah Faber, he fought in a time where the UFC was, and I feel like out of all sports, because the UFC is kind of very new in terms of like the sports landscape in general, that the trajectory of fighters and of getting better and improvement has been pretty steep. And I think Uriah Faber, if he fought today, would kind of be a middle of the pack nobody, rather than a former WEC champion and somebody who's very very much respected as one of the best. So I mean, you can kind of give him you could give Faber the edge just because of kind of, I guess, his time, and you can't blame him for doing the best he could at his time. But you saw how he was late in his career. Didn't really
Faber is in the Hall of Fame,
didn't really have his, yeah. Faber's in the Hall of Fame, and obviously deservingly so. But I think that when it turns to skill for skill, I think that probably the Korean Zombie is probably the more talented fighter, at his best. And then obviously guys like Jose Aldo, who had an incredible run, and then Volk now, and Holloway. So there's a lot of guys. You can even talk about McGregor and his run at featherweight that are up there. But I think the Korean Zombie sits comfortably within the top 10, probably at 9 or 10 for me personally. And I think he's a Hall of Famer just because of the fact that, that he's.
So you would put Yair Rodriguez as a top 7 or 8 featherweight of all time?
Well, I don't know if I put Rodriguez.
I mean, he beat him.
I guess.
He was an interim champ.
Yeah, I guess.
I don't know if Yair, in my opinion, would rank that high. Right now.
Yeah, I guess just because year hasn't been that active.
But I mean, this year was his most active year. This was the first time Yair fought more than once a year in
ever.
21. Okay, so 22 he fought once, 21 he fought once. He didn't even fight in 20. Yeah. And then 19 he fought twice. So first time in 4 years he fought twice. And chances are he won't fight again unless that Giga fight actually comes through, or maybe somebody else.
See it.
So like you said, he's not exactly a extremely active fighter, Yair.
Yeah, but I think TKZ's impact goes larger than just wins and losses.
That's exactly, yeah.
So I think 14 really somebody who's brought so much excitement to featherweight for over a decade that he was there. And for me, I think he sits right at that round 10 spot for all-time great featherweights, because he was a guy that, although his record wasn't great in the UFC and he didn't win a belt, he challenged for I guess, because Yair didn't win the interim. No, he didn't win the title there. So he challenged for the belt twice in his career. So obviously he was somebody who was at the top and was the number one contender twice. And probably would have been a lot more if he didn't get those 4 years stripped from him. So one of the biggest what ifs in UFC history is TKZ, but nonetheless, I think he's somebody that ranks pretty high. Respectively.
Maybe we could put a poll up and ask what the fans think.
Is TKZ a top 10 fighter of all time, or a featherweight fighter of all time, or they should be in the Hall of Fame? Put both up.
Yeah, absolutely.
But we'll attach that with this part of the segment. But that will conclude that. Moving on. We didn't talk about it purposely after we talked about Holloway TKZ, because we're going to get into it now. For our next question, what is next for Max Holloway, and does he deserve a fourth shot at Volk after that win?
I think it's pretty obvious that he does not right now.
Yeah.
Right now. Not saying ever, but you look at his 2 wins. Beating Arnold Allen was huge because Allen hadn't lost in the UFC. He was looking almost unstoppable. Mm-hmm. And then Allen obviously put a halt to that hype train. But then the Korean Zombie, real quick on this, he's a hype on he's a legend based on the hype he had and his excitement, but off of a relatively inactive TKZ, a win over that, especially being a minus 850 favorite, isn't exactly super impressive. That's just another legend of the game he fought, sure, but it wasn't like if he would have beaten Ilya over TKZ, that maybe would have boosted him a title shot, because Ilya now is kind of like what Allen was, just beating everybody, and Ilya hasn't lost yet, right? And obviously, Holloway beat Allen. But it's just not, it's such a sticky situation because Holloway has proven to be in a league of his own, just a league right below Volkanovski, and I think Volk doesn't want to have that fourth fight because I think he believes he's made his point and proven that he's a better fighter than Max, which On paper, he's won 3-0, right? But obviously, there's been a lot of dispute over how that second fight should have went. So people even think the first fight could have went either way. I think the second fight, there's more of an argument for Holloway winning that fight. And obviously, there was no dispute on the third. It was just 50-45 across, and maybe that's why they won't have a fourth fight right now.
Yeah.
Just because, you base it off the most recent matchup was that third fight. And that third fight was the most distinctive win for Volkanovski, So if Holloway beats another contender, or if he goes up and fights a 55er and wins, it goes back to 45 maybe. But I don't imagine him fighting Ilya because, again, that's like Volk getting a sloppy seconds for like the millionth time. If Max beats Ilya, that win isn't as notable as if Max beats Ilya first, that title defense isn't as notable as if Volk beats Ilya first and gives Ilya his first loss of his professional career. So I don't know, man. I don't think he deserves it right now. I think another big win for Max maybe would warrant him a title shot, but just off of 2 wins this year, I don't believe so, man.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to agree with the fact that he's not deserving of a fourth shot just yet.
Yeah.
And what's next for him is so tough. When you're looking at the division, right now, you got Yair Rodriguez, who just fought and lost for the title. Ortega, we don't know where the heck he is, as we mentioned earlier on the pod. Holloway just beat Arnold Allen. Then Topuria is kind of next up for Volk, and Volk is kind of he jokingly mentioned it on one of his interview appearances where he was like, I need this guy Max to stop killing off all our contenders, so I can have some title.
And I think the UFC is going to be generous to Volk and not give Ilya Max right away. I think Volk's going to fight him first. I think Ilya's a clear-cut contender. And that fight will happen at the end of the year because Volk wants to fight one more time. And he's not going to wait for the 55 belt because I don't think Makhachev is willing to make that. Presuming that Makhachev beats Oliveira, I don't think Makhachev would be willing to make that cut.
He can't make it.
He can't make it. Exactly.
He can't make 45.
So the timelines just don't add up. Ilya is the clear-cut contender.
Yeah.
Even though a win over Josh Emmett isn't huge, just how exciting of a fighter Topuria is and where he ranks. He's number 5. That's not a far-fetched fight between the 5-ranked guy and the champion. I mean, Irene Aldana just fought Amanda Nunes, and she was a 5, or she might even been the 6. No, I think she was a 5, and she fought Nunes. So we'll see. I didn't mean to cut you off, I'm sorry.
Nah, you're good. You're good, boss. But I think when we look into the future for Max, I think his next fight may not be at featherweight. Honestly, I feel like if he wants to have a really competitive fight that's gonna warrant him a title shot, it may not be at featherweight because I don't know if any of these guys. I mean, you could talk Yair. I feel like that's the only one that would really
make sense right now.
Yeah, but I don't think it really makes sense. For either guy, I think Yair needs a little bit of a step down in competition. Maybe a guy like Allen, something like that, and we don't know where T City is. So I think I think a fight that maybe people aren't really talking about, maybe just because Max hasn't talked about moving up, but maybe a fight at lightweight. Maybe get a guy like Dustin Poirier. I kind of like that as a big fault, right? Is this not this would be a rematch?
That wouldn't be a rematch. It'd be a third fight.
It'd be a third fight.
Poirier's beat him twice.
Yes.
So I don't know if I completely agree with that right away.
But I feel like I don't know. I feel like it's 2 high profile guys. I feel like they could even headline or co-main a pay-per-view, even headline pay-per-view, honestly. If they really wanted to. But I mean I think it'd be a great fight to fight 3 more times, and Holloway obviously could get his lick back against That's Poirier.
True. If he beats Poirier, then absolutely I think he's absolutely deserving, especially moving up a title shot against Volk or Ilya. But you look at the lightweight division, Gaethje's sitting out until a title shot, which is fine, unless he fights McGregor, which would be a huge payday. But more likely than not, he's going to sit out for a title shot. Oliveira is booked, obviously, to fight the champ. Dariush there's speculation on him fighting Arman, who's sitting at the 8 at some point. And then Chandler's going to fight McGregor when he's back. And then, obviously, Fiziev and Gamrot, the 6 and 7, are booked for September. And I don't think any lower than that, it would just be pointless. Why would Holloway move up to a division to fight the 9th ranked Dan Hooker?
Yeah.
Hooker's a dog.
I was kind of thinking just kind of that Poirier trilogy.
I think it's the only one that makes sense.
I
just don't like that it's another trilogy. And after losing to Gaethje like that, Poirier's stock dips a little bit. But like you said, they're both 2 really high profile guys. Even like Oliveira and Holloway would be good, but that would be exciting if if Oliveira loses, because if Oliveira becomes a champion 55, Holloway's obviously not going to fight the champ at 55 just because he's one of the best contenders of all time at 45.
Yeah.
So I don't know, man.
Yeah, so it's a tough spot for Holloway, but
spot.
I think that I think that what's next for him, it would kind of be play the waiting game, see if Yair would want to scrap, because that's probably the only matchup that makes sense for him in the top 5 currently, or maybe look up at lightweight. Maybe challenge a guy for a trilogy in Dustin Poirier. While obviously Volk and Topuria, which what it seems like at this point, going to duke it out later this year. Maybe wait for your shot that way and fight one in between, and maybe get your look back on Poirier. But it's a tough spot for Max, and we both agree he's probably not deserving of a 4th shot. So right now, he's gonna have to find some other options. I think if he just waits long enough, and if Volk beats Topuria, probably he's next. Because then who's next? It would probably have to be Holloway.
Well, then
he could just play the waiting game.
Volk could just move up to 55 at that point.
Yeah.
Maybe even for good. That cut to 45 doesn't seem that hard for him.
No, Volk's a tiny guy.
But he's just lapping in circles around these guys. And Toporia's the only one. Even if Topuria somehow beats Volk, Volk is obviously, there's no dispute that he's not deserving of an immediate rematch.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I'm saying? That's 2 fights right there Volk would have before before Holloway. The first Topuria fight and the second Topuria fight.
Absolutely.
So he's literally in the worst spot he can be in.
Yeah, he's kind of stuck in gatekeeper land, which is so unfortunate for Max.
He's not even a gatekeeper, because gatekeepers are guys who win some, lose. The only guys
he's gatekeeping the title.
I know.
Title shots.
Bro, you think of it.
He's not the typical gatekeeper, but he's a gatekeeper of title shots.
He's 25-7, but he only has losses to 4 guys. He's 3 losses to Volk, 2 losses to Poirier, 1 to McGregor. And I think the other guy is Dennis Bermudez or some shit like that. I don't even know.
Is it really? He lost to Dennis Bermudez?
I believe so. That was early, his 2nd or 3rd fight in the UFC. So
that's crazy. Yes, he did. You're right.
So he has 7 losses, but only losses to 4 guys. Well, I don't really know too much about Dennis Bermudez. I just think that was his name.
He was pretty elite back in the day.
He was?
Yeah.
He did beat him, right?
Yeah. Yeah, he beat him decision.
Memory served me correct today, folks. And 3 of those guys are champs or fought for the belt. So the guys fought the best, but I think that Poirier fight is probably what's going to happen. If Poirier wants to fight before the year ends, I think Holloway would definitely fight in November or December, September, October, November, December, 3 to 4 months for a full camp to recover. And he doesn't really have to worry about cutting too much weight, because he's a naturally skinny guy. Obviously, he's not like Aljo, who's big and then, has to slim down a whole bunch.
Yeah.
But the last couple fights Holloway's had, he weighs at the featherweight limit. He's weighed at 46 for this fight, and who did he fight for this? I think he weighed at 46 when he fought Allen. So
yeah,
he's getting older, man. These cuts become harder and harder as you get older.
Although he's only 31, which is so crazy.
It's so crazy. But he's been in the organization since he was 20.
Yeah.
Imagine you're in the UFC right now. That was Max Holloway.
Yeah, fighting the best in the world. I could not imagine. I would get
first fight in the UFC against McGregor.
I love when you look back and at those fights and see like, oh my gosh, like this fight, McGregor Holloway was prelim, I know they're just 2 guys that are making their debuts, or only 2nd or 3rd fights in the organization. You don't know how good these guys are truly going to become, but these superstars that fight early in their careers is always something that's interesting to see, especially in the UFC, because that's where it happens more often. Boxing guys are prepped up all the way until they're champions of one of the billion belts and organizations that they have. But nonetheless, let's move on, and let's move on to a new segment called Champ or Chump, where me and Aiden pick a guy who's kind of on the cusp of a champ, whether it's on the cusp of a championship, maybe 1 or 2 fights away from the title, or maybe a prospect, and tell you whether they're going to be a future champion or there's going to be a chump like you and me. So let's get into our first guy who's fighting this weekend in Ciryl Gane. Aiden, Ciryl Gane, a champ, future champion, or just a chump?
This is a tough one for me, guys. This is really tough. I'm like 51-49, honestly. But I'm going to be honest with you. This breaks my heart to say. I'm going to go with the chump. I'm going to go with chump. And it's so close, so I don't want to get blasted in the comments for this. It's so close. But I think, if a fight again, I presume that Gon is going to beat Spivak, right? And Aspinall's already called out Gon. And a win against a win against Spivak is not going to give him a third shot at the title. Yeah, it's not going to give him a third shot at the title. Let's switch it for a second. Because, after he knocked out Tuivasa last year in France, that gave him his second title shot. He only had one win between Ngannou and Jones. That was Tuivasa. He's not going to have one win between Jones and a third title shot. That's just not going to happen. He's not Colby Covington, even though Colby doesn't deserve it. He's not, whatever. Point is, he's not going to get it off of one win.
Yeah.
So, if he beats Spivak, he'll fight Aspinall, because Aspinall's not going to get a title shot off for beating Marcin Tybura, but he will get a title shot if he beats Cyril Gane. Yeah. And Aspinall brought up a good point. I think he could do everything Gane does, but better, and he's not one-dimensional. Cyril Gane is, and Jones said this prior to fighting Gane back in March, Cyril Gane is the most incomplete fighter in that top 5 division, and top 5 in that division, and it's not even close. Obviously, you haven't really seen much of Sergey Pavlovich's wrestling because he knocks everybody out or he gets TKO'd. But that happened once, 5-6 years ago. Doesn't really happen much, but you saw how bad Gane's wrestling was. He got taken down by Jones, submitted 30-40 seconds after. And then when Ngannou took him down, I don't know if it was Ngannou was injured. I forgot what it was. But when Ngannou took him down, he had to work to get back up. And he was struggling on the floor. It was his knee or something like that. So he was already compromised going into that fight, and he had a plethora of, he had a lot of control time when he took him down.
A lot of success on the ground.
Yeah, and not to say Cyril Gane was he was kind of lazy once he got taken down. He was just going through the motions. He has fancy footwork, great kickboxer, but if Aspinall could take him down, I wouldn't be surprised if he submitted him. So if Aspinall beats Gane, that's going to put Gane even further back from a title shot. Not for nothing, the guy's 33 years old. That's not super old, right? Because we just saw Glover Teixeira. I mean, light heavyweight, super boring division. But point is, the guy was old who became a champ, right? And you're getting it to this point, man, right? Cyril Gane's almost a veteran of the UFC. I know that probably sounds like a crazy statement to say.
It is.
But he's already...
It's true.
It's true. Dude, this is his 11th fight in the UFC, and it feels like he hasn't had that many fights, but he has. His only loss is being to Gane and His only loss is being to Jones and Francis. So he's been in the UFC for quite some time. But, guys like Sergey, guys like Aspinall, I'm trying to think who else. Guys like Jailton Almeida, who's booked to fight Curtis Blades. If he gets a win over Blades, that might put him at a shot at the title maybe next year at some point. So that you got these hungry guys, younger guys. It's hard for me to see Gane become a champ. I think it's possible, but if I was to bet, I would say I don't see him becoming champ.
Yeah. And, I'm going to play devil's advocate and disagree. But before I do, I got to say, Jailton Almeida is a scary matchup for anybody at heavyweight.
Especially Gane, though.
Especially Cyril Gane.
That's my point.
A home wrecker. That man is he's like a force, he kind of reminds me of he's like a Hamzat of heavyweight, where
but he fights at light heavyweight as well.
Yeah, but pre the fight against, because Hamzat didn't look human until his fight with Gilbert Burns when he actually got hurt and was in a war. But Jailton Almeida right now at this point is Hamzat before that fight with Burns, where he first somebody elite, where everyone he fought is just looks like they're just never strapped on gloves and should never have even been close, locked into a cage with that man, because he looked like a world beater, and he's scary. But let's get into why I think that that Cyril Gane does have a chance to become champion. And I'm gonna say that he does. I'm gonna say that he is a future champion. And here's why. First of all, I kind of disagree with Tommy Aspinall's point in terms of he's better at everything. I don't think so. I think that Cyril Gane, I think his kickboxing is better than Tommy Aspinall. I feel like I have to see more of Tommy Aspinall. I think obviously Aspinall has a lot more power behind his strikes. Because you saw how Tybura reacted off of that one shot. It was
Gane only knocks people out at the back of the head. The proof is in the pudding. I just watched a clip yesterday when he rocked Tuivasa with a punch to the jaw that shook him. And then Tuivasa was stumbling, but then once Tuivasa was slightly turned around, Gane hit him in the back of the head, and that's what dropped Tuivasa. Another fight Gane did that was when he fought Junior Dos Santos. I don't know, 3 or 4 years ago, prior to Dos Santos' retirement. He hit him in the back of the head as well. I think he won that. I don't know if it was TKO or just, I think it was TKO. Mm-hmm. But I'm not saying Gane's a dirty fighter. It seems to be the only time he knocks people out is when it's the back of the head. Aspinall, when he hit Tybura right in his fucking mouth, that put him right in his butt. So the power discrepancies there. Joe, I'm gonna let you finish your argument. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no,
I
you're
get carried
good.
away.
You're
Guys.
good. You're good. But I think that obviously besides the power discrepancy and the grappling obviously deficiency. I think there's a reason why he's only ever lost to two of the greatest. When you talk Ngannou, one of the greatest heavyweights to ever do it, and then John Jones, the greatest to ever do it, just in general. Period. End sentence. I think that he has a chance, man. I think that he comes out. I think he beats Spivak pretty handily this weekend. And I think that in a matchup against Aspinall, which I think is kind of the logical next step for both guys, because I think that would kind of warrant both of them, a title shot post this Jones Stipe era, which me and Aiden both agree is kind of going to be the close of the chapter for both guys.
Yeah.
I think that would kind of put them in a matchup for the belt. Between the winner of Scott Aspinall and then obviously Pavlovich has done enough
more than enough
to warrant him to get be in that spot, against those two guys, the winner of those two guys. But I think that Gane has a chance to win both those fights. I think obviously he has to avoid the power of both guys, but I think they're winnable fights for him. And I still have faith in the kickboxing. I have faith in the development at how old is he? 33, you said?
John's 33.
At 33 years old, that he can make that development to just work on takedown defense, because I feel like, you don't have to be a great grappler. We've seen it at middleweight, guys like, Adesanya and, even Pereira recently, guys who have made it to that championship status, not being good grapplers, but being good at takedown defense and being good at staying on their feet. Because if he can just get, even just decent at avoiding getting his legs taken down, avoiding being, staying in the center of the octagon, keeping control and not finding himself back against the cage, because that's where most of the problems start, when you're a striker against a wrestler, is when you got your back to the cage and they could shoot on you and, and you got nowhere to sprawl to, you have to kind of just get your hooks in or else it's wraps. So I think Gane has a chance, man. I'm gonna say that he is potentially a future champion.
So just go over that timeline real quickly. So he beats. We both agree that he'll beat Spivak. I don't think there's dispute there.
Yeah.
And then that fight with Aspinall is basically going to happen if he beats Spivak. No. So you think he beats Spivak, he beats Aspinall, and then he'll beat Pavlovich. So he has to win those 3 in a row.
He would have to, but I think.
You think it's possible?
I think he can. I think he can, and if not, I think that obviously a loss with Spivak would push him back.
That put him very far back.
Really far back. And that would kill my whole argument. But assuming he does win, I think that a loss in either instance would only put him a fight or two away from the title again in a heavyweight division that's very, very shallow. I feel.
What?
I feel heavyweight's always been shallow, personally. I mean.
All right. Well, we'll talk about. We're gonna go into our segment.
We could debate this too. I mean, you look at a heavyweight division.
Right,
you got John Jones, right? Obviously the champion. But then you got Sergey Pavlovich, who's next. Very good. Cyril Gane, obviously very good. Miocic on his way out, but still very good. Then you got Aspinall, who is the last guy that I feel is elite outside of Almeida, who is an elite prospect still. That's elite. Right, you got so 5 through 15. You only got one guy who I feel is even close to being someone who's a potential title challenger.
That's obvious.
Because then you got
Almeida, right?
Blades, who is in and out.
Overrated.
I 100% agree.
Tuivasa, I feel like underdeveloped. He's just
a banger.
He's a brawler.
He's funny enough. He's like kind of like a guy. He's a better personality, but he's kind of like the our what they've seen most recently in terms of the Guess Who loss in kind of Mark Hunt, where they're just guys who have a lot of power, who are one dimensional, but they're entertaining. They're very.
I actually might have to change my list real quick now, looking at these rankings.
Yeah, but heavyweight, man, it's so shallow. I feel.
Yeah, kind of right, honestly.
One, because you think the four through champ is elite, right?
But if Volkov gets a win against Tuivasa in a couple weeks, I think that would put Volkov, I guess, closer to a title shot than Gane. If Gane loses to Spivak.
Yes, but Volkov is, I feel like, a taller but kind of worse version of Cyril Gane anyway. Very one dimensional once again. I guess not one dimensional because it's kickboxers, but what Volkov's coming in to do. He's not going to come in to grapple with you at all. He's going to want to stand there and strike, and I don't think he's elite at it anyway. So yeah, heavyweight, man. Yeah, very very shallow division. I'm glad you changed your mind on that because I'm like really like
Yeah,
you really
I'm
think
gonna
like I
change my
mean
mind
you
on that.
got guy the 15th is I don't even know who the 15th I don't know who Rodrigo Nascimento is personally, and he's the 15th ranked heavyweight. I don't think I can say that for any
Oh,
other
it's not
division.
Marcos Rogerio de Lima anymore.
No,
Oh, he's 14 actually.
oh he got bumped he got bumped up for his loss.
Shit.
So that's just kind of the state
That
of
just kind of
heavyweight.
proves that
But I
solidifies
mean,
Bellator.
heavyweight's always been kind of one of those divisions where it's like,
I was being kind of ignorant and just looking at the
yeah,
top 5 or 6 of that division, and I was like, oh,
nah,
there's like 4 or 5 guys who are really exciting on there, ignoring the rest of the division.
yeah,
Yeah, I
which
mean,
is fair, which is fair.
no,
But
it's
again, there's a reason why the heavyweights are always end up being like, you know, headliners and stuff, more than any other division. When you talk about just, I feel statistically, if you look at it, I think heavyweights probably ranked number one in terms of at least fight night headliners, just because they're exciting fights and they're most likely ended finishes. So that's where the heavyweight gets their, advantage for because they're very entertaining because those guys, they're so powerful that no human chin can really hold can withstand that level of power and especially if it's technically done like obviously these professional UFC fighters are. So it's easy, a lot of knockouts, a lot of finishes. That's why heavyweight's always exciting to watch. But I think technically, elite wise, not the most,
no, you're right.
not the most, depth. But with that, that's going to conclude us. That's conclude the new segment of Chumper Champ. I say future champ. Aiden says chump. I'd probably lean more towards Aiden's side personally. If I had to if I had to put money on the line, I'd
We've
say
been
probably
optimistic.
chump.
Yeah.
But I'm going to be optimistic and play devil's advocate and say he has a chance. Because I think his striking is at that elite level, championship level, but it's just the other aspects, of mixed martial arts that he does have to work on.
Yeah.
But with that, let's go into guess who, and we're gonna keep our records what it actually is. I know you guys didn't see it, but we did go. Well, me and him both got it last week. I chose the champion because obviously we wanted to make it a little easier for ourselves because we've got getting destroyed. But I chose the champion at flyweight, in Alexander
Who
Kukoc.
did I choose?
And then you chose Jeff Neal.
Jeff Neal.
One of the top contenders in welterweight. So we chose two guys that were relatively easy. I'm probably gonna go with somebody who's not too crazy this week either. But I think that I got my guy if you're ready to go. And I think that it's we're working our way to getting a little more difficult here because we don't want to.
No,
we don't want to.
can't be too easy.
We don't want to leave us. We don't want to leave here absolutely pissed off for losing the game. But I think nonetheless it should stay competitive. So let's guess who. Once again,
You got your fighter?
we're back. We're 2-2, and I got my guy.
I'm
for you to guess. Nah, you're good. You're good.
No, I'm
You're good. You're good. You want to go? We can go. You can go first, so we can.
Let me just look real quick. No, whenever you're ready, boss.
All right. So you're good. You're good to start. Unless you want me. Oh, you want me to guess first?
Up to you, boss. You choose. What do you want to do?
We could switch it up to you while we start first.
All right, so you could guess. I'll give
guy.
you the guy and you guess first.
All right, you have the guy?
Yes.
All right.
All right.
Oh boy, I'm scared.
This is actually kind of easy.
All right. Well, we'll see. We'll see. All right. So I wasn't ready to. Let's do it. All right. I only got Zoom up as you can see, so we're good. I'm not looking at your computer. Let's start. Guess who? First question for you, Aiden.
Oh shit! I thought I was asking you.
Oh wait, you're asking me first?
Yeah, I'm asking you first.
Oh, okay. So, all right. I thought we were doing first. That's fine. Okay.
Wait, isn't that what we usually do though?
Yeah, we usually do it this way. I thought you.
No, I'm saying I usually guess first.
Yeah, you usually guess first.
So that's what I'm saying. You can guess first this time.
Oh, yeah, that's what I was gonna say. First question for you.
So you're guessing the fighter right now.
We're so confused.
I'm like,
yes, I'm gonna guess the fighter.
All right,
okay.
perfect.
I'm gonna get my Zoom up. Okay, we're gonna
right.
go back to where we were. I'm guessing the fighter. Yeah, because I was gonna say I said first question for you, Aiden. I'm asking the questions, boss.
That means I'm guessing it.
No, I'm asking the questions. Then I'm guessing. I'm guessing if I'm asking questions.
No, if you're asking, I can walk out right now. I'm like, oh my god, I need to sleep more.
It's all right.
All right,
no,
yes.
How much sleep did you get last night? Are we
actually slept rather decent, like 6 hours.
That's not bad. That's not bad. It's not great. You're supposed to get 8.
At this point, dude, I'm so used to just drinking the cups of coffee, not sleeping.
Yeah.
Sorry, guys, for the mental
Just going on them Dunkin' runs.
Dude, I know the butter pecan's running out for my Dunkin' folks watching. It's only a seasonal coffee flavor, so I got to get the most of it while it lasts.
How is the butter pecans?
It was pretty good. It was actually pretty solid.
Good. I'm glad.
All right, enough of that.
All right, so let's get into guess who. And now for my first question.
All righty.
Does this fighter fight at or above 170 pounds?
Yes.
At or above 170. Does this fighter fight at or above 205?
Oh, that's tough.
You could if they fight in
currently no.
Currently no. Okay, that's a good point. Oh my goodness, do I have it? Is it Paul Craig?
I was so easy. Too easy.
Oh, 3 questions. Boom, baby.
I gave it away with the way I responded to that question, bro. I'm
Greatest
actually
him performance of all time.
that was the best.
He's on the front of my mind because he just got that Brendan Allen.
I'm so stupid. I knew I was literally just looking at the guy.
Too easy. It's all right. My guy.
You can't say if I didn't say not currently, you wouldn't have guessed.
No, I would not have gotten that right away. But when you said not currently, I was like, oh, who just dropped down? Because it's not often that people are dropping down. You know.
No, you know what? That's pathetic.
It's okay. It's all right. Listen, it's okay. Keep the computer up for the prop so you can see the logo.
I know. Sorry, guys. I got a little upset.
Nah, it's all right. It's all right. Listen,
bro, that was literally like I don't even think that was 3 questions.
It's
above 70, above
3 if you count the guess. Yeah.
See, that's it, dude. That was way too easy, bro.
All right.
Maybe not even that it was way too easy. Honestly, it's just the way I answered that question.
Grace, I'm him performance all time.
That is. I don't think that'll be top. That might be a record.
Nah. So 3 questions is the score to beat right now.
It's not happening.
But all right. So let's go into your turn. So whenever you're ready.
All right. Should I have
ready to go?
You know what? I'm just gonna. Should I put my computer down for this?
No. You can leave it up. Just don't have any.
All right. I'm not gonna.
I trust you. Just leave it up. So because I mean, just I won't. When I clip it, I won't.
Yeah, absolutely.
I like to keep the logos here.
No, I like that. Absolutely.
All right. So let's do it.
I'm tight.
Whenever you're ready, Aiden, it is your turn for guess who.
All right. Does this fighter fight at or below 155?
No.
Okay.
Hard no.
Hard no. Why are you making it too hard? Okay.
No. Don't take that too. Don't take that.
Don't take that as for what.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, he's not a fat ass if you want.
Okay. Does this fighter fight at or above 205?
No.
Okay. Is this fighter ranked in the top 10 of their division?
Si, senor.
So that's 3 questions.
Yeah.
Does this fighter have a fight book this year?
Yes, he does.
Currently.
Yes, he has a fight book.
Okay.
He has a fight book.
Does this fighter fight at 185?
No. Yes.
Currently fighting at 1.
Yes. Sorry. I sometimes. Oh my gosh, I can't stop.
Dude, we have.
What did I eat for dinner? That I'm farting like this. All right. Well, let's
hopefully it wasn't like Brussels sprouts or anything nasty.
No, it's been bad.
We don't do vegetables.
Bad on the pod. I hope you guys didn't catch that one, but nonetheless, we'll keep going.
So that was my fourth question.
185. Yeah. Sometimes I get confused with the weight class, but yes, he is a top. You said top 10, right? Yes, top 10, 185.
It's not Brendan Allen, is it?
It is not Brendan.
All right, good. I know that's the question. I would have been like, bro, come on.
No.
All right, so 4 questions and a guess.
Yeah.
At 185. All right. Is this fighter ranked in the top 5?
Yes. Ooh.
I have 3 guys stuck in my head right now.
Based on your questions.
I know who these guys are, but I almost wanted to start guessing.
Yeah, I mean, I would.
Wait, I asked if they're above in the top 5, right?
Yes, if they're in the top 5, yeah.
Among
other revealing questions, it's fine.
It's fine. All right, real quick. Is this fighter Sean Strickland?
Yeah. There you go. Because I'm like, who else?
No, I knew it was, but I forgot my last question for a second.
There you go. Because you said who's fighting, who has a fight booked. I'm looking at the top 5. I'm like, did I miss fight news where any of these other guys have a fight booked?
No. Oh, well, I was thinking. I forgot that that's the top 5 because I know Dolidze and Brunson are 7 and 8 or 8 and 9.
Yeah,
and they're both booked to fight.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the only other guys. And Costa's 7.
Yeah.
And
It cost us 6. So
cost
yeah.
us 6.
So
Oh,
he's
they
right
probably
outside
bumped
the
it
top
up.
5.
So
So yeah.
that's 6, 7, and 8 right there.
Yeah. Well, Sean Strickland, Aiden.
I'm not proud of my
He's
performance.
not even happy about it, just because of the fact
I gave yours away way too easily. Nah, I'm not even that. Like that's fair. The 13th ranked middleweight, you're not gonna get that in 3 guests. But the way I answered that question, not currently, like
Not currently. I was like, oh yeah.
Uh,
All right. Well, that goes. Guess who?
I think next week I'm gonna
that was
incorporate a
quick and
female
that was
fighter.
fun. Yeah.
Nah,
Let's get
I gotta study that rankings.
Let's get the ladies involved.
Let's get them involved, right?
And it's school starting for us as college students, within the next couple of weeks. And Aiden's gonna be not studying school. He's gonna be studying the women's strawweight and flyweight.
I'm actually, bro, I'm gonna be studying.
No, hit me with a bantamweight. That's not in like the top 3. I'm gonna have to strength.
No, that's literally it. Yeah, probably just gonna have you guess the champion. The champion of the division. That's all I know.
There is no champion at bantamweight.
Oh, I thought you said female divisions.
Oh yeah, no.
Oh, but yeah, you're right.
I was saying if you give me, because like I could make my way around flyweight and strawweight, like kind of. I feel decently. You got
strawweight, kind of.
But when you got we're talking about bantamweight, it's like who the heck is there besides?
I know like 4 people.
Pena and Pennington, who are like
Pennington,
who should be fine for the belt, and that's literally
Caitlin Vieira.
Yeah,
fuck, dude. Oh, I sound like
girls that Amanda Nunes starched.
Literally.
Holly Holm.
You ready? Oh, the one who was accused of PEDs,
Bruna Silva.
She's ranked 3 or 4, real quick.
3, right? 3, yeah. 3. Although that's probably going to be getting stripped, folks. Unfortunately,
that ranking.
Yeah, I mean, if she tested positive for PEDs.
But is that a confirmed thing? She was actually on PEDs.
Well, yeah. Well, she says it was her ADHD medicine.
Oh my god.
But I mean, who knows?
Yeah, who knows?
But oh well. But let's move on to another new segment. 2 new segments on the pod here today, keeping things interesting. We're going with our rankings, and now we're gonna go MMA rankings. That's what we're gonna call it next year. MMA rankings. And we're just gonna be ranking different things across mixed martial arts, and we're gonna start with UFC divisions this week. Top 5, next week bottom. I guess bottom 6 because there's 11 total, including the women's. So let's go into me and Aiden's top 5, and just quickly the criteria here. We're gonna have to go with the entertainment value. Are these fights interesting? Do I enjoy watching this weight class compete? The actual skill of the weight class, as I talked about with heavyweight, which spoiler alert, and you probably guessed it, not in my top 5 because again, the skill from the top all the way down the bottom, big gap, and outside of those top 5 guys, not really many that are elite. So that's something I got to take into consideration. The recent championship fights, have they been interesting? Taking that into consideration, along with other things. And obviously, we're just going to be this can be, recently. I don't want to give a year time frame to it, but currently, what is, our top 5 favorite UFC divisions. And Aiden, I'll kick it to you first for your number 5.
For my number 5, I had 5, 6, but if I have to choose one, fuck it. I'm gonna go with. Damn.
Go your first one. Go your first one.
The first one I've written down. Okay, at number 5, I have middleweight, men's middleweight, and I know people probably wouldn't agree with that.
They got women's middleweight.
No, did I say women's middleweight? Yeah,
no, you said that.
I was reading.
I'm fucking with you.
No, I have. I don't know. Women's middleweight would be a tough division. Jesus.
Oh my god.
Giants.
Those some big women.
I know, but no. At number 5A, I had men's middleweight. I know a lot of people might not agree with that because of basically how Adesanya has. Let me pull up the rankings real quick. I just closed them. Of course, I did. I know how Adesanya is basically,
ruled,
kind of made his way around that division. Taking away that loss to Pereira, but you look at Dricus du Plessis, who hasn't lost in the UFC yet. He's 6-0, and he just put on a clinic against Robert Whittaker. Yeah, he struggled in that first 2 minutes, but after that, it was all du Plessis. Even in that second round, was all du Plessis prior to that knockout. I think Whittaker had a couple strikes, but nonetheless, you got du Plessis in there, who's that fight against Adesanya with all that tension between those two. That makes a big fight. That's something we want to watch. Whittaker, Cannonier, Vittori, and Strickland has such an exotic personality. It's like, who doesn't want to watch Sean Strickland fight? But then you got Paulo Costas making another return. Hamzat Chimaev, who I think is primarily going to fight at men's middleweight. Why do I say men's middleweight like there's a women's middleweight? Who's going to fight at middleweight? I don't see him making that cut to welterweight unless he has a automatic title shot or maybe interim title shot. But no, other than that, I see him mostly staying at middleweight. Then you got Paul Craig, who we don't know how he's going to do. Even though he's all the way at 13, we don't know how he's going to do in that division. We don't know how Brendan Allen's a tough up and coming, not up and comer, but I guess his streak he's been on recently is exciting to watch. You got Roman Dolidze, who you just lost to Vettori. He's still an exciting and good fighter. You got a lot of Ikram Maliska. I know he's kind of an outsider, but he's another guy who's just had one fight in the UFC. He's fighting he's fighting Nasruddin Imavov in October, who's ranked number 12. There's a lot of not up and coming fighters, but there's a lot of exciting matchups in that division. It definitely doesn't deserve to be put any higher than 5. Mm-hmm. I could even see the argument for 6 or 7, but actually I don't think 7, because I think 6 would be another argument. I think women's strawweight, that was what my 5B. That's a close one in middleweight. It was so close to choose just because you got, Zhang Weili is such a dominant fighter. She only has 3 losses on her record. I think one was way before the UFC, but she has those 2 losses to Namajunas, that head kick knockout, and then you had that controversial split decision loss. I gave it to Weili, but it doesn't matter what Aiden gave it to. She still lost to Namajunas. But then you have, Yan Zonyan. I don't know. I'm just going to say Yan, who's sitting at the number 3 spot. Her and Zhang would be an exciting fight. Obviously, Tatiana Suarez, she was out for quite some time, but she's been dominant in the UFC so far, just putting on a clinic against Andrade not too long ago. You got Amanda Lemos. Didn't Amanda Lemos just lose recently? She lost to Macy Barber, right? Yeah. All right, I'm now make sure my sorts are there. Mackenzie Dern's an exciting fighter. There's a few exciting fighters in women's strawweight.
Lemos just lost to Weili.
Bro, I'm it's hard. Not Amanda Lemos. What did I say? I looked at it. I meant Amanda Ribas. That's the one I was. Ribas, yes. I was looking at Lemos and then said Ribas. No, I'm sorry.
Love my
there's a couple of exciting matchups in strawweight, like maybe 3 or 4 or 2, but I think overall men's middleweight is a little bit more exciting. And Pereira was talking about making a drop down to 185. This is what Pereira said, but he gets that 205 belt, and then he wants that trilogy with Adesanya at 185. I don't think that should happen. I think it would make a lot more sense for it to be at 205.
Yeah.
I think that's that would be what most likely is going to happen.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, if Pereira is willing to make that drop down to 85, that spices up the division even more. So I think men's middleweight is a little bit more exciting than women's strawweight, but it's close. It's close.
I agree, and for me, I put women's strawweight as my 5, as my 5A, if you will. I think that this division, I think it's more about the depth of this division. When you look at women's strawweight, there's 1 through 15 out of all the women's divisions. I think is by far the most sad. Angela Hill at 15 is still a very good fighter, and you got the Karate Hottie in there. Tabitha Ritchie's pretty good as well, and then Amanda Ribas. Obviously, we've seen her. I think she even headlined. That's what I
meant to say.
Mackenzie Dern, and obviously, we've seen a lot of Andrade this year. Lemos just challenged for the belt. And I think, the only issue and knock against women's strawweight you could say is that Weili, I feel, could kind of have that Izzy effect, I feel, soon, where she just becomes a dominant champion. Because right now, Esparza, I don't think ever will have a shot at beating her. And Thug Rose, I think if they fought again, I think Weili gets the better of her at this point in their careers. So there's not too many matches for Weili outside of Yan and Tatiana Suarez.
That's the only.
So I that's the knock against it, but I think that's the same knock you could give to middleweight with Izzy, where Izzy's reign has been, for the most part, unscathed outside of the 2 fights, the one fight with Pereira. Has been, pretty much unscathed in a fight where he kind of, was kind of a early stoppage, and he could have argued that he could have kept fighting and would have went on to win a decision. If he didn't get TKO'd in round 5. So, he's somebody who's been a dominant champion, and he's kind of knocked off all those guys. But I think for me, I think that, strawweight just gets a little bit of that above, just because I think it has more depth in terms of the talent from 1 through 15. But we'll move on to number 4 now, and one that 4-3. Me and Aiden are in agreement with. So
Oh, we are.
we'll
Oh, because
have
I made that.
Aiden start with number 4.
You want me to start with number 4?
Yeah.
All right. At number 4 is, I almost said it again. Is welterweight, not men's welterweight.
Men's
just welterweight.
welterweight.
And I don't think there's really much of an argument for welterweight not being in the top 4. You know what? Yeah, no, there's no dispute. The only problem with welterweight is these guys don't fight a lot. Like, there's not really a lot of welterweight headline fights. You know, Leon Edwards, he fought once last year, obviously against Usman. He fought once this year. He's supposed to fight Colby in November, but there's been so many, there's been so much speculation on when Leon's going to fight again or who he's going to fight again. The problem is, I don't think the top of the 170 division is active enough. I mean, let's be real. Colby, he hardly ever fights anymore. Khamzat's not going to make 170 or barely will make 170. Gilbert was extremely active. He had 3 fights in the first 5 months of the year, but now he's going to take some time off, which makes sense. Rachmanov is extremely exciting, obviously. Ian Gary is extremely exciting. 2 guys, and Khamzat. So that's what makes that division pretty exciting, is you got 3 guys in that division of the top 10. Khamzat, Shavkat, and Gary. I think Gary's 13-0 now, Shavkat 16-0 or 17-0, and Khamzat's 12-0. So there's 3 youngish. Khamzat's like 29, but you got 3 youngish undefeated fighters. They all have all the talent in the world to become the champion in that division. So it makes that division, it could be so exciting. But the problem is, like I said, they don't fight enough. Leon, he fights once a year. Same thing with Colby. If Colby became champion, that spiced it up a lot. I'm not even saying that as a fan, it's just being true. It would shift a lot of things in that division. Bilal fought once. Now, he was actually pretty active. I'll give him that as a contender. But other than that, man, Kevin Holland's really exciting. And he's sitting at, I think he's 4-2 in the welterweight division. His only losses being to Thompson, which was a doctor stoppage, and then that fight against Khamzat. But Khamzat is, one of the most exciting. He's like a generational talent. Yeah. And I'm not going to say the fight would have went differently, but that fake hand dab, like, do you remember that from the beginning of the fight?
Yeah.
That was BS. I don't feel like you would have got that takedown on Holland right away if that didn't happen. But, it doesn't matter. But then Della Maddalena.
He also had the weight advantage, too. There was a lot.
9 pounds. You know what I'm saying?
That was skewed against Holland.
That's a lot. Exactly.
That's why I don't even consider that a loss on this record. That's like a listen. You did the organization a favor by
taking the fight,
taking this fight on a day's notice.
Exactly. And I think Holland, he can be a top 5 fighter. He's so skilled. If he beats Della Maddalena, I mean, that's 13 and 14 fighting. But I'm not going to get into individual fighters in depth. The point is, there's a lot of potential in that 70 division. Yeah. But and I think that division could even be, well, right now we're talking about the 4. It could even be at the 3 or 2. But if they just need to, the champion needs to fight more. I feel like they need to have more contenders fighting each other.
Absolutely.
That's why I'm going to leave it at 4 and no higher than that.
And I'm gonna agree with him. And even a big thing with welterweight as well. And I feel what makes up for the inactivity at the top for me, which is knocking it down to 4, is I feel the depth at welterweight. You got guys that don't even rank, like guys like Li Jizhang, guys like Dane Rodriguez, who was just ranked. Ponzinibbio is a great fighter. Raheem Buckley had that crazy knockout, a few years ago, and he's always a guy that you're looking out for. And
what page is that on?
To watch.
When you see like right the top 30
rankingmma.com. It's like their rankings of the top, but it gives you an idea of who's close and who's not, which is why I like doing it.
I'm gonna look that
yeah, it's a good page. Shout out rankingmma.com.
Oh, do they include Bellator guys in that?
Yes. So, or no, it depends. That they do have like a full MMA one, but I just obviously picked UFC because most of what we talk about here is UFC. Because again, we're not talking. If you're a football fan, you're not talking about the XFL, talking about the NFL. So that's why we talk about the UFC. But back to middleweight, welterweight quickly. It's an organization. It's a organization. It's a weight class that if you ask me, 2 years ago, I don't think it's in my top 5, to be honest. And it was purely because of that Kamaru Usman title reign. Headshot dead. Leon Edwards has really, put so much electricity in this division and, given it so much life. And then you got guys like Khamzat in there as well, who, will he be fighting at 70 again? We'll see. But, guys in Burns and Rachmanov who are just really tough guys. And then, you got interesting prospects like Ian Gary, Kevin Holland, even Luque, I feel is not a prospect. But he's a guy who's always a tough out. And somebody I love watching. This fight was RDA was great. It wasn't most exciting, but was a masterclass on Luque's part. For him to just dominate those last 4 rounds. But really exciting weight class, and I think that with Edwards at the helm right now, I think him and Covington make for really exciting championship bout, and there's a lot of potential future matchups. Obviously you got to talk about the decision Muhammad, in there, who's probably going to get the next one. But it's an exciting weight class currently, but inactivity at the top knocks it down to 4. But with 3, and I'll start with 3 here because we agree. Let's talk featherweight, man. I mean, Alexander Volkanovski has not lost and probably will not lose for a quite a while. In terms of featherweight, obviously, in defending his belt, because he's just proven time and time again that he's kind of levels above these guys outside of Max Holloway, who's again, close, but in their last fight, it was not close. So how close really is he?
Exactly.
So it's so that's the one knock you could say on featherweight, is that Volk is just such a dominant champion that, going into title fights, Topuria, he's going to be a big favorite. I'm not really, I'm excited to see that fight, but I'm excited to see how Volk wins that fight, in my opinion. I feel.
So it's basically a guaranteed win.
I mean, at least I feel, man. I just feel like there's not too many contenders that can challenge at the top, but it's another division that's so deep. You're looking at guys like Giga Chikadze, who's only at 8 right now, who's a fantastic kickboxer. We just saw this weekend. Guys like Doug Nasty, Bryce Mitchell, who are other, guys who, I'm tuning in. Sadiq Youssef, who I think is very underrated in the grand scheme of things, especially at featherweight. Is a guy that's ranked as well. And I think it's, at the top, elite guys. Yair Rodriguez is must-watch television. Brian Ortega, when he actually decides to fight, I feel is must-watch, television for MMA. Menard Allen's a fantastic prospect who's, right on the cusp of being a title challenger. I think featherweight's a great division. I love Volk being the champion because he's a champion that, unlike a guy like Kamaru Usman, who kind of had some very, very, and Adesanya too, who've both had lackluster title defenses. I can't think of a Volk title defense that wasn't either A, dominant, or B, an exciting fight. So that's why I
wouldn't say Usman had necessarily I think his only lackluster title defense was probably the first Masvidal fight. That was pretty boring.
Fight. Yeah.
But he had three of those fights, Covington, he TKO'd him. He knocked the life out of Jorge Masvidal on that second fight. And then he knocked out Gilbert Burns.
Yeah. And then his second fight with Covington, it was outside of that one.
It could have been a draw, honestly.
Yeah.
Or that fight was all right.
Yeah, it was all right. The second one, the first
one was a classic.
All-time great. But yeah, it was Usman's reign was, I guess it wasn't as bad as
Adesanya's defense
has been pretty lackluster. But Volk's always in interesting fights, which is why I can't knock the champ for just being a dominant champ, because he's one of the best of all time. Probably my featherweight goat.
I think so too. I think he could retire today. Maybe one more defense, but Aldo had 8 defenses. But I think you mentioned this briefly at the beginning of this podcast, is the talent today, it doesn't compare. Well, sorry, the talent back then doesn't compare to the talent today.
Yeah, absolutely.
These guys are so much more athletic, in my opinion. They have, they're getting all the best trainers in the world. They're on these strict programs, like the strict physical therapy, like all these different methods and like the science that they didn't have back then that they have today. So it's when you have to include the type of talent from now till back then. That's why I feel like that tarnish. I'm not going to say it tarnishes Aldo's legacy, but I think if Volkanovski was to fight Aldo in the prime, both respective primes, I still think Volk is dominating that fight.
I think Volk wins that fight as well. But for do you have any other, you want to say anything else about 3 being featherweight, because it's a consensus?
I think now. Well, 2 and 1 are the exciting ones.
So talk to me about 2. What's your number 2?
I think, if I'm not mistaken, is my 2. We have different 2 and 1s, right?
Yeah.
My 2 is lightweight, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. Now I don't know why. I think I closed my page.
You're good, boss.
All right. Yeah. My number 2 is sitting at men's lightweight. Now, I don't think if Islam was looking completely unstoppable up until his fight with Volk, and that's what made this division so much more exciting to me, because that fight with Volk showed that Islam has some vulnerability in his game, and he can be beaten, especially by a guy who's smaller than him, who fights at a lighter division than him. At that point, it was like, all right, it's either Gaethje or Poirier getting a title shot. It was kind of getting a little boring. But now, Gaethje, he had that knockout win against Poirier. That fight makes it a little more. That makes the defense for Makhachev a little more exciting. You know, you got guys like Dariush, who, you know, he did get TKO'd against Oliveira, but Oliveira is an all-time great in the UFC period, in my opinion. You know, Michael and Conor McGregor coming back. If he fights at lightweight, that boosts the lightweight division. And then you could even look below that. You could even look kind of like what you said about welterweight at the bottom of the division. But after number 5, Fiziev, he had that, you know, war with Gaethje back in March. And prior to that, though, he had a really good fight with those Anyos last year in a fight night. Like, I could very well see Fiziev being a title challenger in the future. Gamrot, I don't know. Because Gamrot he's not boring, but he's a very big wrestler. He's like 32, 33. He's getting a little up there in age, so we don't know what he'll do. But Arman's another one. Arman's like 26 years old. He's very young. You know, and if he fights Dariush and he beats Dariush, he might be a fight away from a title shot, or might almost have a title shot at that point. He'd probably have to wait a little bit till after Gaethje. But, you know, Arman's at the 8. Dan Hooker's making a little bit of a comeback. You know, we saw that knockout win against that TKO win against Claudio Poyes back in 281 of last year. Claudio Poyes, not to say was nobody, but no, he was an up and comer. And then, you know, Hooker put a halt to that. And he had that war with Jalen Turner back in not too long ago. Back in 290. I feel like Turner probably could have won that fight. That third round was very close in my opinion. But you saw the revival of a fight, or the revival of life, I guess, Dan Hooker had in that fight, because that first round was all Hooker. I'm sorry, it was all Turner. Even the beginning of that second round with that head kick that Turner landed on Hooker actually fractured the orbital bone in Hooker's face. You know, so I'm sorry, Dan Hooker. I stalled for a second, huh?
I said, and he ate it.
He ate that. Yes, it was insane. So Dan Hooker's making a little bit of revival. I'd like to see him fight again at the end of the year to see if this, you know, this little revival is for real or not. But then you got Grant Dawson, who, you know, a lot of people don't really know who Grant Dawson is. He's kind of flying under the radar, but this guy cannot be denied. He just put on a clinic against Demir Ismagulov, who he actually, one judge had him winning 30-26 or something like that, which is complete domination. Oh, yeah. You know, so Grant's a beast. RDA is at the 11. He's, you know, he's obviously up there in age. He just lost to Vicente Luque. Well, and I don't think he's fighting. He's going to fight at 55 again, so we'll see how that goes. Jalen Turner has so much talent. I just mentioned him, obviously. He has so much talent, and his record is 13-7, which looks kind of pitiful when you say it out loud. But the guy was on a 5-fight skid, beating guys like Brad Riddell, who at the time everybody thought could be something really good, you know. And he lost to Gamrot. I thought he won that fight in a very close split decision. And then he obviously lost to Turner. He lost to Hooker on another split decision. But, you know, if Turner makes a little bit of adjustment, maybe he has a better camp, because he obviously weighed in not too long ago, 2 pounds over the weight limit. So obviously his camp probably wasn't the best. Maybe he could have adjusted a couple of things. He, in my opinion, has all the talent in the world to be a title challenger. He just has to, you know, just pick it up. He's on a little bit of a slump. Matt Favola, Renato Moicano, and Diego Ferreira, I don't know. He just beat Michael Johnson, and that put him at the rankings. I'm not too sure about that, but Favola and Moicano, man, those guys are exciting. They're young. They know how to put on, well, not the youngest, but they're exciting fighters. And not to say they'll be fighting for belts, but you'll tune in to watch them fight. So I just literally, out of the top 15, I named like 8 or 9 guys who are exciting and can make some move in that division. So I think that's why it's a very good spot at the 2. In my opinion, it's not the 1, but I'll leave it at 2.
And for my number 2, I'm gonna give it to bantamweight, a division that, you know, as we talked about earlier in the pod, is kind of in a flux right now at the top. And I don't think that's a bad thing for a division to be kind of who's next, because I feel there's some divisions where it's who's next in a way that either the champions cleared them out or there's not very clear title challengers. I feel like in bantamweight, there's a million guys who you can make a case for that could be title challengers. So those are guys that are not all of them are gonna be title shots right away. So those are gonna be guys that are gonna be matched up with each other. So there's so many exciting matchups like we kind of previewed earlier in the bantamweight. So I won't go too much on that. But, you know, even down the division, you got a guy, Umar Nurmagomedov, who's, you know, obviously, you know, elite prospect and does not have a 0, still has a 0, you know, when you're looking at his losses. And it's just a division that has really just been revitalized, and one that wasn't really on many people's radars, I feel, for the longest time. But between the Petr Yan, you know, championship run that he had, where he was, you know, very popular and got a lot of fanfare, and then Aljamain Sterling, you know, being kind of that, you know, being that, I'm blanking on the word, but kind of like having that villain, you know, or being the heel. That's the word I was looking for. Being kind of the heel of the division, and being a guy that, people didn't like, and he kind of embraced it, And I think that, he was a good champion and had some great championship fights, But I think it's a division that it's not as at the one for me, but I think there's so much depth in terms of guys, and there's a lot of great prospects, even guys like Ricky Simone, Adrian Yanez, and Chris Gutierrez, who are guys that may have stumbled a little bit, but I still feel can compete at the top, eventually if they keep developing. So I like this division, man. It's an exciting division. I love watching the bantamweights go at it, and it's a division that I feel has probably for me gained the most stock as of recently, especially in, O'Malley being the champion definitely helps that. I'm not a, fanboy of O'Malley's, but I'm definitely, a fan of him and his fighting, because he's obviously, the best that there is currently, at bantamweight. Well, he has the belt, so you can't technically he's the champion. So yes, the champion isn't the best, but nonetheless,
you're right. He's
champion.
a champion, so I guess
and he's a guy that obviously brings so many eyeballs to the sport just because of his personality and flashy style. So, it's a division that's I think has a lot of potential, and I think it's going to be trading hands in terms of the belts for a little bit, because I feel like it's so evenly matched at the top, and that's not something you could say for every division.
That's why, in my opinion, are you done with?
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
That's why, in my opinion, bantamweight's the number one. Him and I have opposing opinions between the 2 and the 1.
Yeah,
I didn't mean to spoil it for him, but I'm gonna say bantamweight's the one because that last statement proves my point. That's one of the divisions of the UFC where there's not necessarily a dominant champion. That okay, I know Aljamain. Sorry, that people can be like, what is this guy saying? Aljamain just had 3 defenses almost. We've discussed multiple times on the podcast so far why not Aljamain's reign was padded, but there was some holes in his reign. Let's just leave it at that, right? And how he even got the belt in the first place. I won't go into depth there, but the way O'Malley knocked him out though shows that he clearly could have been beaten. It didn't mean it wasn't like, if my opinion, that's not as surprising to me as if, Ilya comes out and knocks Volkanovski out. There's a little bit of a discrepancy there, but you take that away, man. We talked about it last week. Merab, he's weird and ugly, but the guy's a great fighter, and I'd love to see him fight for the belt. I'd love to see him fight for the belt because I know he could win the belt. I think he's a better fighter than O'Malley. He might not have the kickboxing. Like, I even think he's a better fighter than Aljamain. And now I know, and Aljamain has 3 defenses. The Wallace Willie's never even contended for the belt. But I think Merab can be the champion. Cejudo coming back to that division revived it a lot because Cejudo is so corny. He says the most outlandish things at times, but you cannot deny the accolades Cejudo has. And at 36 years old, still competing for the belt. And a lot of people thought he even won the belt or won that fight, which would have given him the belt. So, Cejudo being there, Sandhagen, he suffered a couple losses in the past, one to the champ, one to the ex-champ, one to the ex-champ before that, and Peter Yan, and then he lost to Dillashaw in a split decision, which a lot of people think he won. So Sandhagen's an exciting fighter. He could be the champ. Peter Yan, man, like how much do I have to say about Peter Yan? He's on a 3-fight losing skid currently, but you take away that Merab fight, a lot of people think he won that O'Malley fight. A lot of people think he won that second fight against Aljo, and most people thought he won that fight. Actually, he was winning that fight against Aljamain the first time, but he need him in the head. So he obviously has the ability to be champion, and he's only 30 years old, or 31. So he's still pretty young. Then Marlon Vera. A lot of people don't think Marlon Vera is a top 5 fighter in that division because of how he got dominated against Corey Sandhagen. But he's exciting, and I think he showed in his fight against Pedro Munoz that he wasn't as hesitant in the first round as he usually was. He didn't keep up at the pace that Munoz was at, but he wasn't as laid back. And I think that fight against Sandhagen back in March was a wake-up call for Marlon. And he's like, okay, when you get to fight these really good guys, man, you can't, especially these 5-round fights. These guys have cardio for days. Days isn't a word, Jesus Christ. These guys have cardio for days. They're not going to be as easy to knock out. You have to pick up the pace early on. Like, you can't just be, because if you're like that for 2 or 3 rounds, you pick it up at 4 and 5, you win 10-9, you still lost the first 3, you're going to lose the fight 48-47. It's just how it is. You know, you look at Marlon Yadong Song, or I always say his name backwards. Song Yadong. You know, he's hurt right now, but he's an incredible boxer. He's 25 years old, guys. He's so young. I think he could even be champion one day. You know, Rob Font just suffered a loss. Dom Cruz, you know, he's a legend of the game. We don't know when he's gonna fight again. Pedro Munoz just fought. I don't know if he'll be champion, but Munoz is still an exciting fighter. Umar, Joe just mentioned briefly, 16-0. This guy, a lot of people think will be the next champion in maybe 2024, 2025. We'll see. Ricky Simone's exciting. You know, Adrian Yanez, he was looking unstoppable in that division until that loss against Rob Font. And that was a banger of a first round. You know, they were both landing some heavy shots, and then Font clipped him, and that was the end of that. And then Gutierrez, you know, he did get outworked against Munoz, but in Munoz back in a couple months ago. But you know, Gutierrez put Frankie Edgar into his retirement. I don't think people, you know, should forget about that. And even when you look outside the top 15, there's still some contenders who are on the cusp of that top 15. So overall, in my opinion, it's the most exciting division. But you know, I wouldn't be upset if you guys disagreed with that. I could see debate for other divisions being at the number one. But right now, just because of how there's so many contenders, and I feel like the belt's going to get passed around to that division multiple times. That's why for me it's exciting, because you don't know who's going to be champion at any given day.
Absolutely. So that's why, you know, a lot of those reasons, that's why I have it at 2. But for me, lightweight has been one for a while. And it's one that it's going to be tough for lightweight not to be one, because I feel like there's just so many high profile names there. You know, you look at the top, obviously Charles Oliveira, who's now a superstar. You know, and every, you know, just every instance of the word, you know, just comparing the fanfare for Oliveira compared to the amount of him and Islam getting rematched compared to the announcement of him and John Jones, Stipe fight. Those two, the Oliveira fight got way more, you know, it was going trending and it got way more fanfare for that matchup rather than John Jones. And when it was Charles Oliveira fight week against Dariush, all the talk was about Oliveira. You know, Dariush was an afterthought, you know, both inside and outside of the cage, unfortunately for Dariush. But it was just, you know, it's a fight division that, you know, obviously Islam, you could say, could go on to be a dominant champion. But I think as we saw in the Volk fight, he's very susceptible. And I think that, you know, even guys like Gagey, who we you know, talked about how he's a decent matchup for him, you know, on the pod earlier. And even Oliveira, I think, has a shot at beating Islam. Islam is not Khabib by any means. And I think that one of these next 2 fights, I think somebody's going to catch him, you know, because he has been beaten before. So I think that, you know, he's a guy that's, you know, his title, it seems secure, but it's not secure, I think, as people think. And then you go down the division, you got guys, you know, as Aiden mentioned, you know, guys like Dan Hooker's kind of on a revival. Jalen Turner was a great, you know, who he just beat, who is a great prospect up and comer. You know, the steamroller Frivola, Long Island guy, who's fantastic. And even, you know, a matchup this weekend, and 2 guys who are just right outside the top 15. And Benoit Saint Denis versus Thiago Moises is another great fight of 2 guys just right on the cusp of being in that top 15 spot. And the guy Brad Riddle that you mentioned that was you know, I think he's been on a bit of a losing skid. He started his career, you know, his UFC career undefeated on a big win streak, lost 3 straight, you know, all by finish. So he hasn't looked great as of recently, but he's a guy that I think is in a spot that absolutely should bounce back and should be exciting. And then you got guys, you know, right outside of there, like Bobby Green and other guys, Drew Dober, who are just exciting guys at lightweight. You know, you can't forget about the likes of Tony Ferguson, who, you know, obviously, you know, talking currently is not very great, but still a guy who's, if Tony Ferguson fighting, I'm going to be watching it. Unfortunately, you know, he still wants to fight, but, you know, if he's going to keep fighting, I'm going to be there to watch. But there's so many guys who are exciting at lightweight. And, you know, you can even go down to freaking a guy who I despise and Paddy Pimblett, but somebody who has a lot of fanfare and is, you know, kind of a big name in the division. But it's a division that, you know, it holds a special place in my heart. It was one of the first divisions that I really started getting into the sport. You know, it helps that, you know, that's where Conor has primarily fought in the last few years. You know, but there's so many guys that in lightweight that I feel are just make it so interesting. And I feel like it's, the perfect balance when you talk about 155ers of strikers and wrestlers. And I feel like when you're watching lightweight fights, it's just dynamic. I feel like they're all just dynamic, guys, and so well rounded, at the top down. So that's my case for lightweight being my number one. And if you have a different one, like Aiden said, it's all, at the end of the day, this is our favorites.
Exactly.
No one's really right in this, and there's no right answer in terms of what the best UFC division is. But for me, it's lightweight, for me, it's bantamweight, and I think they're pretty much 1 and 2. And I don't really see much of a debate for them not being 1 or 2. I mean, if you like somebody especially, I can see it. But I feel like for those two to be the top 2, I feel like that's kind of the consensus. But that's going to do it for our new ranking segment. MMA rankings. Hope you guys enjoyed the top 5. You're going to get the bottom 6 next week, so be on the lookout for it.
There'll be a lot less controversy for the bottom 6, I believe.
Oh, absolutely. Although, I mean, there might be some people a little upset, but of where I put heavyweight. But nonetheless, we'll move on. I don't even have it ranked yet. I just know it's not going to be 6.
Well, I think you said 5 and 6 because I had 5 A and B. So.
Yeah, for sure. But let's talk a little bit of Gans Spivak before we wrap things up here. Fight night in France, the second time they're going back to France. And, obviously there's some great fights on the main event, on the main card, not the main event. Sorry, I'm losing it here. But Volkan Ozdemir making his return against Bogan Gustav. Don't know much about Gustav. I mean, Google don't even know much about him. But he's fighting, the ranked Ozdemir, and Ozdemir's obviously a guy who's had, there's ups and downs in his UFC career.
For the belt before.
Yeah, contender for the belt before. So he's somebody who's who's a staple at light heavyweight. And then you got the lightweight fight I just mentioned in Saint Denis and Moises, which should be fantastic. 2 guys who know how to finish fights. That one may not go the distance. And then the co-main of Thug Rose, the return. I love Thug Rose personally. I'm really excited for that. Against Man and Fury. Yeah, not a big Thug Rose guy. I like
a little corny in my opinion.
I buy it though. See, in the way that you like the Kamaru Usman corniness, I like the.
But her corniness is a little bit different because anytime she goes into the fight, I mean, listen, she was, and I'm just talking shit, but she's like, I'm the best. I don't know, bro. It's like, look, bro, and then she, but then she puts on a snooze fest against Carla Esparza. Following that, I'm the best.
I think that's the only knock on Thug Rose. Is that absolutely?
It's a big knock because it happens every time she goes out there.
Awful fight. No. I'm talking about the Carla Esparza. I don't even mind her saying that.
And she's inactive too.
Some people, I feel, I think I kind of briefly touched on how different fighters and different just competitors, athletes need different things to kind of get themselves motivated. I think for her. Excuse me. She needs that self-reassurance. She needs to scream that she's the best, because I guess that kind of gets her in that mentality of, yes, I'm the best. I can beat anybody, and obviously there's a lot of pre-fight anxiety. So maybe that kind of relieves some of that for her.
I'm sorry. I'm just stuck on this. I looked up the guy that Ozdemir is fighting, Bogdan. Tell me he doesn't look like Fyodor Emelianenko and Anthony Smith had a baby.
We'll put a picture up.
We're gonna put a picture up.
This exact picture up.
But look at this guy, dude.
He does.
He's like those scary. He is very scary.
Scary.
Jesus,
I don't want to fight him.
No, thank you.
Light heavyweight, yeah.
And his debut in the UFC, I believe.
His UFC debut, so he's definitely a highly touted prospect. And I would assume that he's probably the favorite if he's somebody who's.
Of course, they never put up the odds, and they only put it up for like a couple fights. Doesn't make sense.
Which is annoying. I could probably find the odds. I'll find the odds quickly, but we'll keep going on this fight card, and then a fight at women's flyweight that could very much determine who is the next title challenger, or at least who's right knocking on the doorstep between Fior and Thug Rose. So a big one at women's flyweight. It's good to see that they're putting her at second. That fight at second and not at like fourth, and like we saw with Blanchfield. This past weekend. But nonetheless, and you go to the main event and Sirgan and Sergey Pivak, Sergey's, has kind of flown under the radar, even for me personally. Obviously he submitted Derek Lewis in the fight that nobody was able to watch because it was at like 3-4 a.m. and it was just a ridiculous time because it was the card that was supposed to be in China, and then ended up, for some reason ended up being at the Apex. But he's a guy who's been on quite a tear. Has finished, going back to 2022. He's finished his last 3 fights after losing to Aspinall in 2021, where he got Augusto Sagai knocked out Greg Hardy, which isn't really impressive.
Not at all.
You know, everybody knocked out Greg Hardy. I probably knocked out Greg Hardy in another life.
So the girlfriend you
but-
beat on knocked him out.
Yeah. No love for Greg Hardy here. But you know, and then submitted Derek Lewis. So he's a guy who's been a little bit on a tear. Is he on Cyril Gane's level? I don't think so. I think Gane gets it done you know, pretty handedly.
I'm gonna say round 2 finish for Cyril.
Yeah. Actually Ozdemir is the favorite against Gustav. Is -194 to +150.
That's usually how it is, though. I
Yeah.
feel like the guys who've never debuted, like it was similar with Strickland and Abus. I forgot his last name for a second. That when Strickland just fought his last, I don't know why his last name. But
is it Imamov?
no matter, huh?
Is it Imamov or am I thinking?
No, that's Nazardine. Abus,
Nazardine.
Magomedov. I think Magomedov is no.
It's one of the
Nonetheless,
one of the odds.
One of the odds. But yeah, he had one fight in the UFC and then he fought Strickland, who was ranked 7. I mean, that fight, those odds were pretty close, barely favoring Strickland. So that's kind of not what I expected.
Yeah, so
that
I mean,
just shows how boring 205 is, and we'll talk about this more next week. But
absolutely,
if Ozdemir is at the 8, you're like, bro, it's Ozdemir.
Yeah, and Thug Rose finds herself a decent favorite at +164,
but she's an
against
underdog.
Fior. Yeah, she's a decent. That's a pretty big underdog.
164, you think so? That's
+1 for Thug Rose. I mean, for Fior to be -215, I thought it was going to be more like that's a decent.
-215 is pretty big.
That's a pretty decent odds.
But it makes sense because she's never fought. Not that I remember. She hasn't fought in 125. You know, and 25 is a big division, man. It's 10 pounds is a decent jump, so we'll see. And she's fighting the now third ranked flyweight. So
yeah, but she you know, I mean, and you look at Fior's resume, really can't be denied. She beat up on Tabitha Ritchie, something we talked about earlier. Bueno Silva, we also talked about, who just got
she beat Bueno Silva.
She beat Bueno Silva.
She fought at 35 at some point.
Yeah. So or maybe I think Bueno Silva fought at 35.
The lightweight.
Yeah. But then she just beat Caitlin Shakugian, you know, late last year. So she has an impressive resume, you know, at women's flyweight. So she's obviously very deserving of this spot. And it's gonna be a tough fight for Thug Rose, but never count Thug Rose out because I'm a big fan of Thug Rose. So whether I'm gonna be betting on her this weekend, you're gonna have to wait for the TikTok to find out if I get around to it, because I kind of forgot it's 2 weeks, but it's fine. But nonetheless, I think, you know, us telling UFC France, that's gonna do it. I think Gane gets it done. I agree. But that's going to do it for this week's MMA on the Island pod. A little bit longer, I think, this week. This one, you know, we experiment with a few different segments. You know, we'll see if you guys enjoy them or not. But nonetheless, we'll keep doing it because at the end of the day, it's not what you like. It's what we want to do. So
it's true.
So with that, that is going to do it for MMA on the Island, episode number 12 now. Close to 20. We're getting there. I feel like that's the next milestone for us after 10. We'll get to 20, but we're 8 away. And this will be one step closer to it. The real episode 12, barring any technical difficulties, will be released, you know, very shortly. So I hope you guys enjoy the fights. Rooting for Cyril Gane, my future champ. But enjoy the fight fans. We'll see you guys next week, and take care, everybody.
Take care, guys. We'll see you next week.